Chapter 1244, Devouring. Chapter 1244, Devouring, _ Each warrior fused with the origin could have a coexistence relationship with the respect ancient continent. When their compatibility with the flaming origin reached a specific level, they could draw the energy of the ancient continent. Every time they drew the energy of the ancient continent, their competence was significantly boosted, which was beyond their real realm. However, when the energy of the ancient continent was drawn, the result directly showed on the continent. Mountains exploded and collapsed, and rivers and oceans dried up. The speed of energy draining in this continent became faster. It happened like that on ancient God continent right now. The God clan's ancestral land in ancient God continent had collapsed. Mountains and withered plants were a part of the border of the continent. The earth and heaven energy there was taken away. Due to the magical power of the Genesis fruit, the ancient God continent's earth and heaven energy had reached the utmost level in the recent 10,000 years. It had boosted all members of the God clan and made them the overlords of the universe. This world had rules. When the God clan was at their peak of power, it was the time that the earth and heaven energy in the ancient continent was thickest. After that, it was the time of declining, just like what happened to Grace Mainland, the God-blessed mainland, and the ancient demon continent. Every time Desolate opened, it was the time that the ancient continents renewed their energy cycle. Currently, the energy of the ancient God continent was increasing gradually. It could begin to gather the energy remnant in outer space once again. However, it was impossible for the ancient God continent to reach its peak of thick energy one more time. That was because Haig didn't get the Genesis fruit this time. Today, as Haig had taken the energy of his ancient continent, it affected his ancestral planet directly, which was the collapse by the edge of the continent. Anyway, the energy he had drawn had caught people's attention. With the price of mountains collapsing, rivers drying up, and forests withering, Haig's power had shocked the powerful old freaks everywhere. His meteor now had a long, bright tail of billions of meters. Filling with Haig's energy, the warriors below a mortal realm were going to be wounded severely or even killed by this attack. The warriors fused with the origin had such power when they took the energy from the continents. In the dark, many people were watching Yin. They wanted to see if he would choose to draw the energy of Grace Mainland too. It would shatter the world of many people living in Grace Mainland. Things would collapse like it was happening on ancient God continent. He's not able to draw the energy from the origin. Audrey sighed inside a stone tower. Finally, she knew where Haig had his confidence. It turned out that Haig had intended to use the energy of the ancient continent right from the start to fight this battle. Among the group of 4 warriors who had fused with the origin of the ancient continents, only Haig could do this since his compatibility with the flaming origin was really profound. Yin couldn't take the energy from the origin. With this disadvantage, it was going to be very difficult for him to defeat Haig. Yin is going to lose this match. Although he has reached incipient God realm, his fusion with the flaming origin isn't much. He can't use the power of the origin. He's going to lose eventually. Haig is the miracle of the God clan. After 10,000 years of accumulation, the foundation of the God clan has surpassed the bloodthirsty force. Lena knitted her brows. She seemed to have made up her mind. Many people had the same thought as hers. This battle was related to the God clan and the bloodthirsty force. It could also affect the structure of this universe for the next 10,000 years. It was arranged so those experts would have their final decisions. The bloodthirsty force used to be unrivaled. To counter the bloodthirsty force that year, the God clan had joined hands with their forces to gain the final triumph. At that time, the God clan couldn't resist against the bloodthirsty force if they fought alone. After 10,000 years of accumulation and subduing the bloodthirsty force, and making this monster small and vulnerable, the weak God clan had turned into a new beast. The God clan today wasn't the fragile clan that year, and the bloodthirsty force today wasn't the invincible force of the past. Seeing Haig take in the power of the origin of the ancient continent, many people hiding in the stone towers made their decision. They were reluctant and emotional because they thought that the current structure of the world couldn't be changed easily. I'm going to destroy your soul to take Genesis fruit back. This world will still be the world of our god clan. All of a sudden, Haig shouted. At this moment, he looked so energized. His entire body was dazzling like a god, rising from Earth to rule the galaxy for 10,000 years. The god clan will be destroyed. It's the rule of nature. You're just a poor witness. Shi Yan's eyes became placid. The incipient extent he hadn't released was now emerging clearly in the sky above his head. At that short glimpse, a new galaxy appeared in the void. Shi Yan's incipient extent had many stars with endless space, life, and death. It looked actually like a small universe. His galaxy had beautiful suns and cold moons. It also had miniatures of life stars, dead stars, and even mineral stars. It had everything that the cosmos should have. At this moment, it seemed like Shi Yan had just created a whole new world, a world that was pretty similar to this world. At the same time, 720 acupuncture points in his body had created a connection to that world instantly. Each of his acupuncture points was a strange world where he had absorbed a large amount of essence chi from the dead. It then generated endless negative emotions and massive vortexes. The 720 acupuncture points in his body were like 720 new worlds. The negative energy in those worlds was drawn out and poured into Shi Yan's incipient extent. Inside his brilliant, galaxy-like incipient extent, a massive black hole suddenly appeared. It looked like a dark, bottomless mouth that could directly fly out of the incipient extent and swallow the meteor that was falling from the sky. No one could understand how it could do that. That meteor was Haig's power, taken from the origin of ancient god continent. It could kill all the warriors below immortal realm. At this moment, the black hole had swallowed the entire meteor. That meteor flashed and then disappeared. The black hole slightly twisted, turned into wisps of smoke before vanishing. Also, Shi Yan's brilliant incipient extent now had a new magnificent star. The meteor that the black hole had just devoured was Haig's metal star, which was generated from his incipient extent. It seemed to become a star in Shi Yan's incipient extent. The black hole flew out of Shi Yan's incipient extent and swallowed the meteor before returning to his soul altar. Then, Shi Yan's incipient extent now had a new metal star. This was so absurd. It's Bloodthirsty's Power Upanishad. Devouring Power Upanishad. It's the most dangerous Power Upanishad in this world. Unbelievable. He can use it. It can swallow even things from others' incipient extent. It's the exclusive Power Upanishad of that man. Instantly, in each corner and each tower of the mansion, the terrifying auras emitted. The experts of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, the Heaven River Temple, and the Imperial Dark Tribe held their breaths while beholding Shi Yan's incipient extent and metal star that used to belong to Haig. They thought that they were watching Bloodthirsty. 10,000 years ago, that man's incipient extent was a chaotic, black hole. It was the most extreme and evil thing in this world that could swallow the soul altar and everything generated in the incipient extent. Everything seemed to repeat in front of their eyes now. Everybody was filled with fear. And now, Haig became so tired. He seemed to age quickly, his hair turning white. "Withdraw your power," Spark shouted ear-piercingly. He touched the sky and Haig's 4 stars returned to Haig's incipient extent at once. His incipient extent returned to his soul altar. Spark gazed at Shi Yan and roared. A colding river emerged in his incipient extent with the power of the immortal realm expert. It also had Spark's essence chi as if it had its own consciousness. The river plunged down and aimed at Shi Yan. "I do want to see if you have mastered Bloodthirsty's Power Upanishad or not. I'm convinced that if you can swallow all things in my incipient extent." The colding river roared and grumblingly poured on Shi Yan's incipient extent. The willpower of the immortal realm could connect to the world directly and release the earth-shaking energy. Bully. What a bully. Using the power of the immortal realm to counter Shi Yan. Well, I think the God Clan became angry out of shame. Despicable. Many people screamed, but they didn't want to help Shi Yan. Lena held Cecilia, who was so worried as if she had a flame in her heart. Of course, Shi Yan's devouring power Upanishad now can't swallow all things in the incipient extent of the immortal realm warrior. He's not Spark's opponent, either. The gap between their realms is really vast. But if the bloodthirsty force has sent him here, they would have arranged something else. It's time for the bloodthirsty force's experts to crane their necks out, Gillette snorted. The Colding River swarmed over with the power of the immortal realm. Shi Yan's sea of consciousness was fixed, and his incipient extent was about to shatter. Shi Yan's mental world exploded as he screamed. There wasn't as much energy from Spark's attack as in Haig's, but it was accompanied by the seal of power Upanishad and the will of the immortal realm, which were much more terrifying than Haig at first sky of incipient god realm. Shi Yan could resist Haig, but he couldn't even have the thought of fighting back under Spark's immortal will. It was the gap between their realms. Boom, 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 boom. Right at this moment, the corpses standing in strange poses out of the mansion suddenly flew up to the sky like the bolts of lightning. Hundreds of thousands of corpses gathered in the air. Shortly after, those hundreds of thousands of corpses had turned into a giant corpse that was even bigger than the tower. It looked like a corpse of a giant that could touch the sky. A wisp of soul consciousness from outer space reached that corpse. Immediately, it gave the corpse life. Just like the ancestor of the corpse clan, it released a thick corpse chi that was then turned into a white bone saber. It attacked Spark's Colding River. PFFF. The Colding River was slashed before it shattered. It became many smaller streams, and it returned to Spark's incipient extent. Spark paled in just a blink of an eye. He faced the sky and cried, "Frederick!" After shouting, Spark rose his hand to grab Haig. His dark eyes raked through the experts hiding in the stone towers. He tried to press down the corpse chi in his chest, but he didn't dare to linger. Shortly after, he turned into a meteor and shot out to outer space. The massive corpse stood emotionlessly as if it was still watching Spark. It didn't move. The chief of the corpse chi, Frederick. Frederick. Frederick protects him discreetly. No wonder why those corpses appeared. They are for Frederick to come. It's true that the bloodthirsty force had things arranged. Many people hissed on the stone towers. Chapter 1245. Frederick. Chapter 1245. Frederick _ Shi Yan still sat cross-legged on the ground, his face indifferent. He was exhausted. The energy he had accumulated for years in his acupuncture points had been used to create the black hole in his incipient extent to swallow metal star that Haig had created. Because he had spent so much energy, his spirit and body couldn't bear it anymore. However, his incipient extent now had the sharp metal power from the 5 elements. It wasn't a power Upanishad in his soul altar. It just existed in his incipient extent, making it change and approach perfection. Shi Yan was still immersed and shocked. At the critical moment, he had used the devouring power Upanishad to counter the enemy. He had tried and took risks. It worked unexpectedly. His compatibility with the origin wasn't as profound as Haig. He couldn't urge the ancient continent's origin at ease. Thus, when facing Haig's lethal attack, he had squeezed his brain and decided to use Bloodthirsty's power Upanishad. This power Upanishad was really magical, and Shi Yan hadn't figured out its mysteries yet. When he tried today, its power was so marvelous. The black hole could swallow metal star from Haig's incipient extent and put it in Shi Yan's incipient extent. It was perfect in his incipient extent as if it was born there. Shi Yan suddenly recognized one thing. If his power Upanishad could swallow things from the other's incipient extent, should he be able to collect unique power Upanishads like metal, wood, water, fire, earth, sound, light, gravity, illusion, and more? Could he put them in his incipient extent? Shi Yan's incipient extent was like a small world with space, brilliant stars, death, and life. And if he could make it have the 5 elements, sound, light, gravity, illusions, and many other things, would it gradually be like the real world out there? Was it true that his incipient extent would become perfect like the real universe? Shi Yan contemplated as he sat still to comprehend the flash of recognition that had just emerged in his head. The massive corpse created by hundreds of thousands of corpses stood by the mansion and towered the sky. The corpse chi filled the air and made the entire Black Iron City an ancient battlefield with corpses scattered everywhere. Now, the experts of the major forces hiding in the 13 stone towers finally showed themselves. They all wore complicated complexions and looked at that massive corpse. Frederick! Someone was screaming from afar. He turned into a beam of light and zoomed over immediately. You're not allowed to act rashly in this Black Iron City. Tai Dun was the branch manager of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce in Black Iron City. He hurried to the scene and shouted, his face dark and sinister. Black Iron City is a city of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. Anyone who messes with the order of the city has already challenged our Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. Tai Dun bellowed and looked at the crowd. Suddenly, his eyes changed as he was shocked to see the massive corpse created by hundreds of thousands of corpses. That giant corpse didn't have facial features. It had only a skull, which was the combination of dozens of thousands of corpses. Then, the skull turned to Tai Dun. A corpse chi extended and tied Tai Dun instantly. Frederick, you're the chief of Corpse Chi Force, Frederick. Tai Dun discolored in fright, as if he was encountering the terrifying demon. He shouted, what do you want? I'm a staff of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. Even you're a chief of the bloodthirsty force. You should follow the rules. I can smell Feng Ju smell on your body. The terrifying soul consciousness swept through Black Iron City like a tornado and came from that massive corpse. It turned into an air current and crossed a long distance to reach a mysterious area on Tsunami Star. A quiet aura diffused from that mysterious area to reply to Frederick's soul consciousness. Anyway, besides Frederick, no one could know or hear this. However, the old freaks with the exquisite cultivation base immediately understood it. Frederick had contacted that man of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. The massive corpse showed it shortly after. As Tai Dun was tied by the corpse chi, his vitality was drained rapidly. His eyes bulged when he attempted to escape using the soul altar. However, the hand that was made of countless corpses had a firm grip on him and compressed him forcefully. Tai Dun's soul altar shattered immediately and turned into countless light dots that vanished. The manager of Black Iron City was killed quickly and simply like that. The massive corpse that contained Frederick's soul had smashed him utterly. The warriors of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, Broken Hall, Heaven River Temple, and Imperial Dark Tribe were indifferent. No one said a word to stop Frederick. They were familiar with Frederick's brutal deeds. Many old warriors had surprised smiles as they felt that Frederick had changed somehow. He was much more tender than before. It was because they could see that Frederick had notified the mysterious man of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce before he killed Tai Dun. In the past, besides Bloodthirsty, their master, the 8 chiefs of the Bloodthirsty Force never gave anybody face. Under their rage, they could drown an entire star area in misery and bury billions of creatures altogether. Today, Frederick was much more restrained. He had surprised the people who used to witness his brutal nature. He dares to kill even Tsunami Chamber of Commerce's staff. This man is too savage. Audrey of the Imperial Dark Tribe cried. Gillette glanced at her, his face odd. He contemplated for a while and then said, Frederick used to be too callous. That year when he got angry, it meant that billions of creatures would become corpses. When he got angry, even Bloodthirsty couldn't control him. He could even attack other chiefs instantly. He had never thought about giving mercy or favor to anymore. Currently, he looks controlled a lot. I guess it's because his body is still confined. After thousands of years, time has worn out his savage characteristics. Gillette forced a smile and looked at the massive corpse with fear flashing in his eyes. We couldn't believe that the brutal evil of the corpse chief force that year knew how to control his anger today. Lena of the Heaven River Temple sighed. She mumbled, if the bloodthirsty force had controlled itself a little bit that year, the God Clan wouldn't have had a chance to rise. To counter the bloodthirsty force 10,000 years ago, the number of famous experts who had fallen in that battle was around 2/3. Many great powers Upanishads were lost. For them, This cosmos had to pay a big price that it hasn't recovered even after 10,000 years. Lena's eyes were dark and unpredictable. She looked at the young man who was still immersed in his comprehending session. She thought, would they raise the blood rain again? What should the Heaven River Temple do? Teacher, he won. I knew he would win. Cecilia's eyes were shining as she looked tipsy with admiration. She smiled and looked at the young man sitting on the ground. Her beautiful face blushed, and she also felt hot. He won. The bloodthirsty force has proven to us that they are still very intimidating after 10,000 years. Lena gave her a slight nod. So we Heaven River Temple has made up our mind, right? Asked Cecilia. We will talk about this when we come back. I have to report to the temple master. She will decide it. Sigh. The whole picture will become more chaotic after this. Lena sounded as if she didn't expect Yin to win. She wanted to maintain the current situation. She didn't expect the bloodthirsty force to rise again and replace the God Clan. Because of the bloodthirsty force's savage nature in that era that was worse than what the God Clan had now, that era was the worst nightmare to any warrior. Many experts at their peak had to live under the shadow of the bloodthirsty force, and it had suffocated them. She never wanted to live in that era again. Readjusting yourself. Someone will guide you for the next part. He and I have called for the 8 inheritances scattering around the universe. We're going to the Holy Land to set up a sacrificing altar. We're preparing the final steps for you to enthrone. A wisp of soul consciousness suddenly echoed in Yan's head. While it was twirling around Yan's sea of consciousness, the massive corpse standing by the mansion gradually lost its corpse chi. The energy streamed back into the universe and disappeared into the sea territory by Tsunami Star. Frederick's aura disappeared. The terrifying pressure covering Black Iron City vanished after this moment. Many people exhaled in relief. The vague shadows hiding in the 13-stone tower emerged. They landed from the air while smiling in a friendly way. They walked towards Yin. Gulian of the Thousand Fantasy Sect. It's fortunate that I can meet Bloodthirsty's successor today. This trip isn't bad at all. Xingming of the Broken Hall. Lena of the Heaven River Temple. They came with smiles, standing by him with stable auras. Those people included men and women, internal disciples at the high realms, and juniors coming for experience. They all eyed him carefully as if they wanted to see all of his secrets. Cecilia of the Heaven River Temple. After everybody finished their introductions, a charming voice arose. Yin was confused. His eyes suddenly became focused as he beamed sincerely. He looked at the graceful figure behind the group and asked, "When did you come here?" "I've been here for a long time. I've always been watching you," Cecilia answered gently, her watery eyes filled with emotion. Audrey of the Imperial Dark Tribe. Another cold and clear voice arose. Then, Audrey walked out of the crowd. She was wearing a cyan dress, her long hair draping around her shoulders. Her eyes were bright, and it gave her mysterious and elegant bearings. Like a cold moon. The seniors and juniors of Thousand Fantasy Sect and the Broken Hall became stiff when they heard the name Audrey of Imperial Dark Tribe. They proactively made way for her and let her walk straight towards Yin. "Long time no see," Audrey said. She was still cold, arrogant, and indifferent as usual. "Yeah, long time no see." Yin lifted his head, but he sat still. "Congratulations. You've also reached incipient God realm. You didn't fail the reputation of your tribe." He studied Gillette standing behind Audrey. Yin could feel an aura that wasn't weaker than Spark from Gillette. His aura was even stronger than Spark's. Yin could confirm that this man was at least at Spark's realm. Such a character was enough to threaten his life. He couldn't ignore it. He had to treat him gingerly. "Kid, you're excellent. As you can defeat Haig, you're eligible to inherit Bloodthirsty's legacy." Gillette squinted and looked at Yin, then Audrey. A strange light sparkled in his eyes when he was contemplating. "Thank you, Precursor." Yin clasped his fist to greet him. "I've spent a lot of energy in the battle. Forgive me for not treating you well. If you don't mind, please wait for me for a while." "It's okay. It's okay." The warriors of the Thousand Fantasy Sect and the Broken Hall answered. Chapter 1246. Godlord Soul arrives. Chapter 1246. Godlord Soul arrives under Sir. Ancient God Shrine. Feng Zhu and some God clan's elders were sitting neatly under the massive, majestic god statues. All of them wore dark and sinister faces and were silent. They seemed to be waiting for something. Suddenly, a starlight landed and entered ancient God Shrine. It was Spark. Spark paled, gave a dark smile, and hurled Haig aside. Haig immediately kneeled down in front of the god statues and the elders. His head lowered and he said nothing. He was defeated again. He didn't say anything to defend himself. He could only wait for the elders' decision in silence. Spark shot Feng Zhu a look, his eyes murderous. An opportunity was given. It's he who couldn't grab it. He is no longer eligible to lead our clan in the future. What about your opinions? Feng Zhu looked at the other elders. The elders then nodded and looked at Haig with their cold and heartless eyes. Currently, Haig was just an outsider that they didn't want to mind anymore. Haig lifted his head, his face ashen. He felt a chill in his heart as he could recognize something. He stood up and tried to run away with his life. Feng Zhu sighed and raised one hand to grab the void. A dry and thin hand appeared in the air and pulled Haig back. The old man lifted his head to look at the god statue next to him, his face sinisterly resolute. Prepare for his soul to arrive. Feng Zhu had a rare respectful complexion when he mentioned someone. It seemed like that person had incredible fame and power in this god clan, and the great elder and the other elders of this committee had to show respect when talking about him. Haig's face was as gray as ash. He couldn't help but shout ear-piercingly, "No." "Shut up." Spark snorted coldly. A cold symbol arose and sealed Haig's mouth, silencing him. The elders of the god clan then released their soul altars that had various shapes and countless supernatural abilities. Their soul altars bobbed in the void and created a magical formation with terrifying energy fluctuations. The god statues that had stood in this shrine for so many years suddenly revived at this moment. They started to release wisps of memories and soul consciousness that had been kept for so many years that then congregated in the middle of the formation created by the elder's soul altar. The wisps of soul consciousness united and became an ancient soul that had the immense aura of the primal time. Each elder wore a solemn face, and each host soul hovered respectfully on their soul altars. That ancient soul condensed for a while and turned into a black cloud. As Haig was watching everything and freaking out, the black cloud stormed into his head and intruded his soul altar. Haig's incipient extent changed earth-shakingly. His realm increased amazingly from first sky of incipient god realm to third sky of incipient god realm immediately. The bottlenecks between his realms were broken easily. After a short moment, he had reached an unimaginable height. Haig closed his eyes right from the beginning as if he was digesting something. He sat quietly to stabilize his realm. All the god clan's elders studied the new Haig. After they had retrieved their soul altars into their body, the elders kneeled down and greeted him. "Your Majesty, welcome back." Haig didn't react. It seemed like he hadn't adjusted to his new body yet, so he didn't answer the elders. The god clan's elders didn't lose their patience. They remained in their kneeling postures and waited in silence. They understood clearly that before that man had wakened up, the elder committee was the supreme structure of the god clan. But when this man woke up, the elder committee became his backdrop. They had to be servile to him with great respect. This need of being servile hadn't been in their makings for a long time. As it came back now, they all felt a little awkward. Before that man had woken up, the elder committee was the most powerful organization in this cosmos. And now, everything was gone. After a long time, the man opened his eyes, which weren't really special. Compared to the previous Haig, the wise and bright man, this man looked just like the most ordinary man in this world. He didn't have any strange halo. His gaze raked through the faces of Feng Zhu, Spark, and the other elders. "Use my name to summon the 4 heavenly kings." "Yes." Feng Zhu, Spark, and the other elders nodded respectfully. Dash. Inside the ruined mansion, many stone towers had collapsed and the ground became rough. The bridges and the mountain pavilions were now a big mess. The battle between Shi Yin and Haig had leveled this mansion and destroyed the entire quiet resort. However, the experts of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple didn't really mind the situation. They were all gathering in a cracked meeting hall. There were no servants here. Mu Wei, Jiao Mu, Bai Yifeng, and the others stood there, but nobody came to serve them drinks or fruits. Gulian, Xingming, and Lina were the representatives of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple. These three forces were the strongest forces in the universe besides the four great creatures. They had their position, and the God Clan wasn't going to provoke them. They were waiting for Shi Yin here, and they didn't look impatient at all. Mu Wei, Bai Yifeng, Jiao Mu, and Sanji were here to seek help. They told each other about the tough situation of their star areas and the horrible pressure from the God Clan. Gulian, Xingming, and Lina just listened to them and promised nothing. They made Mu Wei's team more restless. Audrey and Gillette also stayed in this mansion, but they didn't come to the meeting hall. The Imperial Dark Tribe could just stand and watch the competition between the God Clan and the Bloodthirsty Force. If they didn't want to join, the God Clan and the Bloodthirsty Force wouldn't have any reason to retaliate against them later. However, the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple couldn't stay neutral. Although they had their positions in the Sea of Stars, they weren't one of the four great creatures, so they didn't have the background to stand equally with the God Clan or the Bloodthirsty Force. They needed to make a choice. Cecilia stood by her teacher Lina. Her bright eyes were so charming and had a faint smile. She was in a good mood indeed. Cecilia Jejia, do you know him? A young girl standing by Gulian of the Thousand Fantasy Sect beamed charmingly. This young girl was around 20. She wore a water-green short dress. She had bright skin with beautiful eyes. When she smiled, 2 dimples showed up pretty cute on her face. She was Gulian's daughter. As she knew Cecilia, seeing her love-spreading emotion, she felt that it fun, so she cried. As Guling had witnessed the battle between Haig and Shi Yin, she was so astounded. Being a member of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, Guling knew how intimidating the God Clan was. For the past 10,000 years, the God Clan had continuously proven their position as the overlords of this universe. Guling knew a little about the Bloodthirsty Force from her elders. She didn't live in that era, so she trusted half of what her elders had told her. Guling didn't think that the existence that used to subdue the God Clan and make the God Clan join hands with forces from everywhere to counter was true. She thought that her precursors had just exaggerated. Until the end of the battle between Shi Yin and Haig, Guling then knew how intimidating the force that had frightened her precursors was. Guling was curious about Bloodthirsty's successor. She wanted to know what was so special about him and how he defeated the future leader of the God Clan. Of course, I know him, Cecilia smiled. You didn't go to the ancient continent to train, so you don't know him. If you had gone to the ancient continent, you would have known of his competence. He's stronger than Haig. Guling giggled, then lowered her voice. Cecilia, you and him, is there something? Cecilia blushed. She thinned her lips and talked nothing. They stood behind their precursors and chatted. They kept their voices low as they were having girl talk. However, the juniors of the Broken Hall and the other forces were listening to them. When they mentioned Shi Yin, Cecilia looked shy and excited, which cooled down the young men who had claimed themselves handsome and elegant. They snorted discreetly. While the juniors were chatting behind them, the precursors sitting in the front were also discussing. Gulian asked, Lina, your disciple, and he used to be on the ancient continent. Has he ever met the chiefs of the Bloodthirsty Force? I don't know. Lina shook her head. Xingming looked disappointed. He turned to Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng. He asked, Mu Ji, Bai Ji, has Shi Yin been taken to the Holy Land of the Bloodthirsty Force to enthrone yet? We don't actually know. Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng shook their heads. Xingming frowned. The Bloodthirsty Force has 8 great inheritances for the 8 power Upanishads. Thus, they have 8 forces with 1 chief for each. Each of these chiefs was an earth-shaking expert. All of them were supernatural and tyrannical. They didn't get along well with each other. As Bloodthirsty could subdue and control them, they had cooperated with each other. But now, Bloodthirsty was gone. Who could unite these 8 forces? After a while, Xingming asked. It's true. That year after Bloodthirsty had fallen, the 8 forces detached from each other. They fought alone. They didn't want to cooperate. If they had cooperated well, even when Bloodthirsty was gone, the Bloodthirsty force would have defeated them. Before that, it was the only time that the 8 chiefs joined hands. Amazingly, they could directly attack the ancient god continent of the God Clan. If they had maintained that alliance, even without Bloodthirsty, the God Clan couldn't have defeated them. Gulian wore an odd face. Will Shi Yin today be able to reunite the 8 forces from the 8 great inheritances? Lina wore a bitter face. Xingming, Gulian, and Lina exchanged looks. They could see that the others hesitant. They then sighed inwardly. They knew well that the 8 forces of the Bloodthirsty force were powerful, but they didn't listen to others. Only when Bloodthirsty existed, they united. That year when Bloodthirsty had fallen, the 8 forces had competed against each other to gain a leading role. It gave the God Clan the golden opportunity to destroy them one by one. Anyway, in the end, they had finally united to attack the God Clan once and for all, directly fighting them in their ancestral star. The God Clan had to pay a bloody price at that time. If the 8 great inheritances could unite to fight against the God Clan, of course, the forces present here would have stood on Bloodthirsty Force's side. But if the forces of Bloodthirsty Force still had internal fighting or didn't want to join hands, they would have to be with the God Clan for sure. It was the reason why they were hesitant. They weren't suspicious of the Bloodthirsty Force's intimidation. They knew how strong the 8 forces were. However, even though they were strong, their situation was going to be very serious if they didn't want to unite. Let's wait for that kid Shi Yin. He'll give us a proper explanation, said Gulian. Chapter 1247. Go to the next level. Chapter 1247. Go to the next level _ Shi Yin sat quietly in a cracked stone chamber. Sha Zhao, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai were guarding at his door to prevent people from disturbing him. The acupuncture points in his body throbbed while his body convulsed and relaxed from time to time. His incipient extent floating above his head was brilliant with suns, moons, and twinkling stars. Meteors shot across his galaxy as if they were trying to convey some mysterious principles of earth and heaven. Waves of magical energy rippled from his incipient extent like real water, expanding inside the stone chamber. It doesn't feel right. Shi Yin frowned and mumbled. He opened his eyes, his face baffled. He tried to think more. The Devouring Power Upanishad was the key to his victory in the battle between Shi Yin and Haig. He had used the black hole in the incipient extent to absorb the negative energy in his entire body to release the black hole from his incipient extent and get out of the space he had created. Then, it swallowed the meteor created by Metal Star. At this moment, that meteor had become a star in his incipient extent and had his aura. When the star had been devoured by the black hole, every sign of Haig was cleaned. The Devouring Power Upanishad was the major power of Bloodthirsty. It was the core power that covered the 8 great inheritances. Being Bloodthirsty's heir, if he couldn't learn the deepest understanding of Devouring Power Upanishad, what could he use to inherit his legacy? What could he use to make the Cortege of 8 submit and support him wholeheartedly? He had used this magical power Upanishad to gain the utmost triumph in this battle. This battle was also the first time he recognized the profound characteristics of his power Upanishad, as it was a magical, unique power in this world. Now, he knew why devouring was the untold secret of Bloodthirsty. This power could swallow all things created in the opponent's incipient extent. If he hadn't joined this battle, he would have never imagined this ability, not even in his dreams. Thus, he now knew that he was sitting on a mountain of gold, but he didn't know how to use it. Without a thorough knowledge of Devouring Power Upanishad, Shi Yin hadn't considered it very important to him. He was still vague about the supernatural abilities that this power could offer him. For example, right now, he wanted to use the awesome ability of this power again. He had moved the black hole from the tier of his power Upanishad in his soul altar to the incipient extent. Then, He connected the incipient extent and the acupuncture points in his entire body. Yin had tried and failed many times. The power he had performed was like a flower that had already withered. Although he was trying his best to perform it one more time, he gradually lost his spirit and felt like his hands were tied. It was because he had spent too little time studying the Devouring Power Upanishad. He had strenuously cultivated space, death and life, and star power Upanishad, and his breakthroughs were dependent on these three major powers. At the same time, the Devouring Power Upanishad hadn't affected his realm's progress. He always thought that it was strange, but he didn't actually focus on this power Upanishad as much as the other three. If one of his three power Upanishads, including space, star, and death and life, didn't progress, his realm couldn't increase either. But it was different from his Devouring Power Upanishad. He didn't need to spend time or efforts to experience it. This power Upanishad didn't require any flash of recognition or deep understanding to break through. As it wasn't bound to his realm, it didn't hold him back even though he didn't cultivate it. Slowly, he had forgotten this power. He thought that the Devouring Power Upanishad was used to swallow the soul altar only. He didn't know much about this marvelous power of his. Until today. Today, he suddenly understood that the Devouring Power Upanishad didn't only swallow the soul altar. As it was Bloodthirsty's lost secret, it definitely had to contain the most magical power in this world. Yin was determined to learn it. Flows of thought flashed in his head. He had continuously simulated and tried to perform that change. Also, he found that he couldn't connect his incipient extent with the acupuncture points in his body. There must be something stuck somewhere. Yin frowned and said to himself while thinking harder. He then immersed himself in his memories. At first, he fell into the dark forest and soaked himself in the blood pond. In the blood cocoon, he received Bloodthirsty's inheritance. Then, he got his first marvelous transformation. The dregs and contaminants in his body were all discharged. He got a beam of original power in his body. Then, after a fight, his acupuncture points automatically gathered and filtered the essence chi from the dead warriors of the Mo family. The refined energy from his acupuncture points had strengthened himself. It could be said that all the things he got today, his realm and his power, was because of the merit of his changed acupuncture points. Previously, he thought that it was the Death Power Upanishad by Xian He, the chief of the Death Force, that allowed his acupuncture points to take in the essence chi of the dead. Today, seeing the marvelous feature of the Devouring Power Upanishad, he thought about a different possibility. It wasn't the power of the Death Power Upanishad. It was a special performance of the Death Power Upanishad. In other words, when the blood in the pond refined his body, he had received the Devouring Power Upanishad inheritance. The ability of his acupuncture points was from the Devouring. It had nothing to do with Death Power Upanishad here. The Devouring Power Upanishad could swallow the essence chi from the dead, swallow soul altars, and even the objects in the other's incipient extent. What else could it devour? He was shocked as he had a flash in his head. The hazy mist in his head was swept away quickly. His mind became clear and bright. The doubts in his heart were all gone. It turned out that he has received the Devouring Power Upanishad right in that cave. But it was funny that he hadn't recognized it until now. He thought that it was an ability of the Death Power Upanishad when his acupuncture points could absorb the essence chi of the dead. He didn't realize that it was the nature of Devouring Power Upanishad. Today, he was able to gain all of these because of his magical acupuncture points. In his early cultivation, he didn't need to take the power from the sun or the moon. He just needed the essence chi from his acupuncture points to break through. His realm could be broken through quickly and continuously. This Devouring Power Upanishad was what had made him a miracle. However, it was ridiculous that after he had the black hole in his brain, which was the advanced performance of the power, he hadn't tried to invest on and study this Power Upanishad. It turned out that it was the best treasure he had neglected. As he knew the change of his acupuncture points was an ability of his Devouring Power Upanishad, the mist in his head was cleared now. He chuckled and then urged his Devouring Power Upanishad once again. The incipient extent emerged above Yan's head. He changed his thoughts, and the black hole slowly appeared in his incipient extent. Then, a divine light flashed like a bunch of dry wood ignited. His acupuncture points were triggered. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 720 acupuncture points and the vortexes in each acupuncture point began to stir. Shortly after, they connected the incipient extent and that black hole. The black hole drifted away from his incipient extent. It looked mysterious when it had a powerful suction force, as if it could draw all souls in this world into that black mouth. At the same time, Yan's acupuncture points felt so numb. Then, they began to have the same suction force. The life magnetic field, vitality, earth and heaven energy, energy from the divine crystals, energy from divine weapons and formations around the area stirred up. They became loose from what kept them, and they were able to enter his acupuncture points if he wanted to take them in. The black hole could swallow things in soul form, and the acupuncture points could draw the matters with energy. They were both abilities of the Devouring Power Upanishad. They just had different forms. Yin laughed. Yin urged his god power. The acupuncture points sent him pain when the suction force got stronger. Inside the mansion, the warriors of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, the Heaven River Temple, Mu Wei, and Jiaomu suddenly felt dizzy. Their host souls seemed to want to leave their soul altars and drift away from their heads. Their essence chi in the body also fluctuated. They were freaking out. This feeling, ghouly and discolored in fright, her face shocked. Xingming paled. He looked at the direction far from them, his face solemn. He took a deep breath. Is it the real power of bloodthirsty? He looked at Lena uncertainly. Lena's face was bitter as she shook her head. That year, the warriors eligible to attack that man were killed or disappeared. I wasn't there, so I don't actually know how the Devouring Power Upanishad is. Gulian, Xingming, Lena, and the leaders of the other forces didn't join the battle that year because their realms hadn't been profound enough at that time. They could only know how strong bloodthirsty was from the stories that their teachers and precursors had told them. They hadn't experienced it, so they didn't know how intimidating the real Devouring Power Upanishad was. They only knew that this power was almost unrivaled. It was the most evil power known in this vast sea of stars. It was the first power that every force and every race agreed on. At a corner of the mansion, Gillette of the Imperial Dark Tribe looked shocked. His countenance changed dramatically when he turned to look in Yan's direction. "What do you think?" he asked in a low-pitched voice. Audrey had stood up for a long time ago, her exquisite face filled with fear. That aura seems to want to swallow everything that was a soul form and matters with energy. It wanted to convert them into his energy. Is it the true Devouring Power Upanishad? Gillette nodded heavily. He took a deep breath and then said, "That kid has reached the next level of the Devouring Power Upanishad. He's making progress. As he could emit such an aura, he has finally gone to the next level. How terrifying is the Devouring Power Upanishad?" Audrey screamed in fear. "You just need to know that Bloodthirsty was surrounded by all of the peerless experts of that time. It was 10,000 years ago. In the end, 90% of them were killed. You can tell why this Power Upanishad is considered the strongest and the first Power Upanishad in this world." Gillette forced a smile. His eyes couldn't hide his fear. "Half of the gravestones you've seen in our holy land are there because of Bloodthirsty." Audrey paled while listening to him. The Holy Land of the Imperial Dark Tribe had gravestones of tribal precursors. Only the strongest warriors of the clan with the greatest contributions could be worshipped in the Holy Land. The warriors whose gravestones were there used to be earth-shaking experts. Each of them was so intimidating. However, Bloodthirsty's Devouring Power Upanishad had killed half of them. Hearing this, Audrey was aghast. No wonder why our Imperial Dark Tribe couldn't rise in that era. Our experts were killed and we had no personnel show up, Audrey sighed, her beautiful eyes pondering. Chapter 1248. Compete for a seat. Chapter 1248. Compete for a seat, _ Yin walked out of the secret chamber. Sha Zhao, Wu Feng, Mo Fo, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai looked ashen. They were currently looking at Shi Yin with fear in their eyes. Sha Zhao's team looked as if they had just experienced a fatal battle. Because they were standing near the secret chamber, their host souls were flickering a lot, and they had even attempted to leave the soul altar when the fierce devouring power had expanded from the room. Blood chi in their bodies surged like a rising tide. Their god power became like streams heading into the vast sea. Sha Zhao's team had to struggle strenuously to resist and calm down their host souls and their turbulent energy. Of course, they knew who caused all of these. "Oh, you guys," Shi Yin was surprised. He looked at Sha Zhao's team who were pale with sweat beading their forehead and asked uncertainly, "Is that because of me?" Sha Zhao forced a smile. "Shi Yin, is that bloodthirsty's devouring power Upanishad? It's so frightening." Wu Feng said cautiously. "My soul and even my god power didn't listen to my control. They had almost left me to go to the secret room. It's like a nightmare," Mo Fo sounded as he was still fearful. "Experts from the Thousand Fantasy Sect, Broken Hall, and Heaven River Temple are waiting for you," said Sha Zhao with a serious complexion. Pondering for a while, he reminded, "The Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple are the strongest forces in this universe. We're much weaker than them. In fact, it's because we were able to live in peace for years without the threat from the God Clan because we were in the same league as them. These three forces are the main forces of this league. Also, they have experts at Immortal Realm. The real Immortal Realm, and not like the experts with half a step into the realm like Spark," added a mofo. Shi Yin was startled. He nodded to them. "My grandfather also has the intent domain of the Immortal Realm, but it was just like Spark. Otherwise, the God Clan wouldn't have dared to provoke our Black River Star area," Imofo continued. Imofo's grandfather was the old freak Black Wind, the real overlord in Black River Star area. He had hundreds of thousands of disciples. The forces from everywhere had considered him their senior. However, a character like him had just half a step into Immortal Realm. He hadn't reached the real Immortal Realm yet. The gap between the false Immortal and the real Immortal Realm experts was really vast. Until today, the only Immortal expert Shi Yin had ever seen was Holy Ancestor Azure Dragon of the Heavenly Monster Tribe. Only him. The Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple had Immortal experts, which had made them really powerful forces. The alliance of these three forces was a force that no one could neglect. If he could get their support, it was going to be really helpful to his plan. "I'm going now," Shi Yin nodded and said to Sha Zhao. "Don't worry. Of course, I will help you solve the danger in your star area. As you've crossed thousands of miles to help me in our agate star area, I will repay this favor. I will lend you a hand." Sha Zhao's team gave him reluctant smiles and nods. Dash! A flow of electrical lightning flashed. Shi Yin appeared in the meeting hall. Looking around to see the people sitting there, he smiled and chose a seat. There were 12 people sitting on the chairs put in the center of this room. They were the representatives of the forces from many places sent here to observe the battle between Haig and Shi Yin. The ones who sat here were leaders of their forces. Their disciples and retinue had to stand behind them. Cecilia and Guling had to stand outside the hall. Mu Wei, Jiao Mu, and Bai Yifeng were the representatives of their star areas, so they got a seat here. However, this kind of seating indicated the low or high positions. Gulian of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, Xingming of the Broken Hall, and Lena of the Heaven River Temple sat on chairs near the chairperson's seat. Also, Mu Wei and the leaders of the small forces were seated below the others. The chairperson's seat was empty. As soon as Shi Yin appeared, he chose that seat, which was even higher than the seats of Gulian, Xingming, and Lena. He didn't try to be polite. Gulian, Xingming, Lena, and the other experts squinted when they saw him arrogantly choose the main seat. They looked a little strange as they thought that he wasn't qualified to sit there. As they had left the chairperson's seat unoccupied, they wanted to test him, though. If he got the leadership position of the bloodthirsty force, of course, he was qualified to take that seat. Otherwise, even though Shi Yin had received bloodthirsty's inheritance, he was just a junior in their eyes. For the time being, he wasn't qualified to sit on that high chair. Gulian and the others squinted, their eyes conveying deep meanings. No one started the meeting. After Yin had arrived, the clamorous hall fell into silence. The heroes from many places kept silent and looked at him strangely. Too arrogant. A low-pitched voice arose from the corner behind Xingming of the Broken Hall. It was Xingming's nephew, Xingyu, an expert at Second Sky of Ethereal God Realm. Xingyu was a talented warrior that the Hall Master of the Broken Hall favored. He was pretty young. Also, even though his cultivation time wasn't really long, he had reached Second Sky of Ethereal God Realm. If Xingyu were older and had reached Third Sky of Ethereal God Realm, he would have had a quota to visit the ancient continent previously. As the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple had a close relationship, the juniors from the three forces knew each other well. These three forces often held competitions and training so their young warriors could have more chances to practice and discuss their attainment. In a joint training of the three forces, Xingyu met Cecilia. He felt like he had met a fairy. He was so passionate about admiring her glamour. He used to chase after her tightly, but Cecilia had denied him. However, Xingyu wasn't enraged. Every time he met Cecilia, he would try his best to approach and win her over. He hoped that she would put him in her eyes. The warriors of the three forces knew he was pursuing Cecilia. The Broken Hall agreed discreetly as they thought that if he could win Cecilia's heart, it would help them gain Lena's favor. It wasn't a bad thing to the Broken Hall. Thus, Xingyu became more enthusiastic. He had entangled Cecilia and irritated her a lot. Many people said that Cecilia wanted to go to the ancient continent even though she knew it was too dangerous to avoid Xingyu. Xingyu didn't think it was humiliating. Quite the contrary, he thought that it was his honor. He often boasted to the other that water could wear out even the hardest stone. He said that Cecilia also had feelings for him. She was just a shy girl, so she didn't want to admit it. He acted as if he had her already. However, after Cecilia had returned from the ancient continent, she announced that Xingyu was just a stinky fly. Apparently, she wanted to make it clear that she had no feelings for him. What Xingyu had boasted became jokes that the three forces enjoyed telling. When someone met him on the street, he would tease him a lot. Xingyu lost his face. He turned to curse Cecilia. He fabricated that Cecilia as a despicable B***TCH who had fun with many men. However, Xingyu hadn't known why Cecilia had to curtly wipe off all things related to him. She didn't hesitate to tear his face even in front of others. This was until he saw the way she looked at Yin. That kind of passionate admiration had told him something. Xingyu knew that there was something that happened between Yin and Cecilia on the ancient continent. He was so outraged that he threw all the hatred to Yin. Thus, seeing Yin take the chairperson seat and the other seniors say nothing but wear strange faces, he recognized something. He took the chance to mock Yin. His words were what the others had in their minds, but they couldn't spit them out. Xingyu cheered up. He inwardly appraised this boy for being smart and his quick understanding of the situation. Xingming squinted, smiled, and shouted, Yin is the future leader of the bloodthirsty force. He got the position and status. He's qualified to sit there. Kid, don't talk nonsense. As Xingyu had been with Xingming for so many years, how could he not understand his uncle's idea? He snorted, and then pretended to be blunt. If uncle says he's the future leader, doesn't it mean that he isn't the leader now? Before he gets that throne of the bloodthirsty force, he's just a junior. Why does he get to be the chairperson here? The more he talked, the higher his voice became. Xingyu glared at Yin from a distance. He looked content as his eyes swept through Cecilia. Cecilia's beautiful face looked annoyed and angry. She snorted and then scolded. This asshole is trying to make Yin look bad. He's so annoying. Guling's beautiful eyes were lively. She smiled and whispered softly, well, Xingyu isn't worth mentioning, but he's right. Yin is just a junior like us. Even if he's from the bloodthirsty force, at most, he could have a spot to stand like us. Why does he get to take the main seat? He's the future leader of the bloodthirsty force. Of course, he's qualified. Cecilia tried to quarrel, but she also recognized that her reason wasn't really adequate. I think Xingyu is right. Guling parted her lips and muttered, you see, those old men didn't say anything. Apparently, they thought that Shi Yin wasn't qualified. Those people always respect position and echelon. As they thought that they didn't hold the high position, they had spared that seat. If Shi Yin wasn't haughty, he would be a dim-witted kid who couldn't tell that the situation wasn't right. He's bold enough to take that seat, though. Inside the hall, the old experts had a strange silence as if they all agreed with Xingyu, letting him shout and criticize Shi Yin for his arrogance. Xingming had shouted once and then kept silent. Apparently, what Xingyu was talking was what he had in his mind. Those seniors had really appreciated status and position. Unless his realm and position had surpassed theirs greatly, Shi Yin sitting there made them irritated a lot. If the chiefs of the bloodthirsty force like Xian He and Frederick had sat there today, they wouldn't have had an opinion. But Shi Yin wasn't eligible, though. Thus, they let Xingyu shout. They keep silent while their eyes rake through Shi Yin as if they were waiting for him to get up and walk out of that seat. Chapter 1249. A Coffin. Chapter 1249. A Coffin _ Shi Yin sat still in the center of the meeting hall. He didn't have any intention of giving up this seat. He squinted and looked at Xingyu, who was still yelling. He gave a faint smile, but he didn't say or show anything. Xingming frowned, his face unhappy. He scolded Shi Yin discreetly for not having a good sense. They had expressed themselves clearly. Did he really think that he had the same echelon as them, or even higher? Mu Wei, Bai Yifeng, Jiao Mu, Wu Lai, and Sanji looked begrudging. They lowered their heads and pretended not to see the strange atmosphere in this hall. As Shi Yin was the successor of Bloodthirsty, and he had fused with the Genesis fruit, of course, he was going to become a famous expert soon. They still needed his help in many issues. Currently, their star areas were in danger. Being a member of the League, they desired the support from the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple to help them solve the God Clan's threat. To them, they didn't dare to offend Shi Yin, Gulian, Xingming, and Lina. The precursors discreetly allowed Xingyu to do that. If they are still discontent, that man will still be yelling. Guling found happiness from the other's misfortune. She threw Cecilia a glance and then teased her. Well, is the man you like really that nice? He won't even blink when someone is mocking him? She felt a little disappointed. She thought that she would have something fun to watch, but Shi Yin didn't have any fierce reaction. To Guling, the one who was mischievous enough to see the world in chaos, Shi Yin looking cowardly and had disappointed her a lot. Cecilia Jejia, if the one you choose has such humble bearings, he can't compare to Xingyu, Guling snorted. Cecilia's beautiful face looked frosted. She coldly looked at Xingyu, her pretty eyes filled with murderous aura. Xingyu doesn't know how high the sky is, she snorted. She looked a little surprised, and she gazed at Shi Yin with hope. With what she understood about Shi Yin, she knew that Shi Yin wasn't a coward. He was a heartless but valorous hero who would take revenge for his grudges. She was sure that Shi Yin had some other ideas and plans. Cecilia pulled herself together to watch. Shi Yin, you're not qualified to sit on that chair. I hope you know your position. Move to one of the seats below. You should use your junior status to join this meeting. Xingyu was still yelling as if he was encouraged by the words of justice. Sitting on the chairperson's seat, Shi Yin wore a cold face, his eyes brutal. Suddenly, he said indifferently, "Quiet." A cold corpse chi suddenly shot out from a crack in the ground of this meeting hall. The corpse chi shot like a sharp arrow and pierced through Xingyu's chest. Pfff. Warm blood gushed out from Xingyu's chest, flashing around the hall. Crack. The ground of the meeting hall cracked open. A cold jade coffin flew up and banged on the wall behind Shi Yin. That coffin looked massive. It was around 5 meters long and 2 meters high. It was glowing in a cold halo. The thick corpse chi emitted and turned into white smoke twirling around the coffin. The atmosphere in the hall became cold and fearfully quiet. It felt like there were ghosts standing in every dark corner of this hall. The squeaking noises of fingernails scratching the inside of the coffin arose, which also rose goosebumps on people's skin. The cold and sinister aura filled the meeting hall and made the soul of each expert present in this place shiver. After the coffin landed by the wall behind Yin, it didn't move anymore. The freaking noises inside the coffin didn't stop. It sounded like the ghost's voice was haunting people and scaring them. Even Lena, who had put half a step into the immortal realm, had to wear a stern face. She took in a cold breath and looked at the coffin with fright. She didn't utter a word. Xingyu was covered in blood. After several seconds, his chest stopped bleeding as his vitality was drained. Xingming didn't say a word, as if he didn't see his nephew die tragically. He just looked at the coffin, his eyes malignant. The entire hall was dead silent. Guling covered her mouth tightly as if she was afraid that she would scream if she didn't do that. She was afraid that her scream would break the silence in this hall and trigger the coffin to kill more. Cecilia's bright eyes had a strange beam of light. She observed the coffin, feeling both scared and happy. Yin glanced at the coffin and gave a faint, satisfied smile. He gave a light cough and said indifferently, "If the broken hall doesn't want to talk with me, it's not too late to leave now." He looked at Xingming, his back straight. A murderous aura shot out from his body, his eyes garnet. Xingming of the broken hall was shocked. He felt like an ancient beast was watching him. He discolored, the emotion in his eyes strange and complex. He pondered for a few seconds, smiled, and said calmly and naturally, "The broken hall comes here with sincerity. Our junior had no sense of propriety. Your people killed him. We won't blame you for his death. If you aren't satisfied, I apologize on behalf of the broken hall." While talking, Xingming stood up and bowed to Yin. He looked honest while looking at Yin and keeping his bowing posture. "Please don't blame the junior for his presumptuous act." Gulian of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, Lena of the Heaven River Temple, Mu Wei, and Bai Yifeng were so surprised. They then wore awkward countenances. The Broken Hall had the Immortal Realm expert. They were a powerful force in this vast sea of stars, ranked right behind the four great creatures. They were a truly mighty force in a large region. As the representative of the Broken Hall, Xingming didn't care about his nephew's death. He bowed and yielded. This man knew how to be flexible. He wasn't a simple character at all. Xingyu, his nephew, was also a warrior that the Broken Hall had concentratedly trained. He was killed, and his uncle had no reaction. This man was a heartless person, indeed. Guling bit her lower lip and looked Xingyu bleeding to death. She paled as she was so terrified. Now, she didn't dare to look at Yin again. She stopped gossiping with Cecilia, as if she was afraid that a word from her careless mouth would bring her to death. She was frightened. "Just let it go. I hope there will be no other exception." Yin flung his arm and talked loudly and harshly. "Although our bloodthirsty force isn't as strong as we used to be 10,000 years ago, not many people can provoke us. It's not the right time, so we've been secluding for a long time. It's because the fortune of the current 10,000 years belongs to the God clan. I hope you guys will make a right decision." Xingming nodded continuously. He sat back to his seat and lowered his head, his eyes cold and sinister. However, when he lifted his head again, he looked sincere, as if he had put on another face. "Forgive me for asking," Lena suddenly said while frowning, "have you ever visited the Holy Land of the Bloodthirsty Force? Have you stepped on that glory position under the witness of the 8 great inheritances?" "I'm going there in several days," Yin said deliberately. Lena smiled, nodded, and then said, "I can speak for the Heaven River Temple. If you can step on that throne under the witness of the 8 forces in the Holy Land of the Bloodthirsty Force, our Heaven River Temple will join your alliance. We will have the same goal for the next 10,000 years. We will be with you during every operation." Pausing for a while, Lena glanced at Cecilia behind her and frowned. "If you can't get that seat, well, let's consider no alliance then. I can't say now whether you guys and our Heaven River Temple are friends in the future. I, Gulian, can represent the Thousand Fantasy Sect, and we will proceed with the same conditions. If you get that seat, you're an ally of our Thousand Fantasy Sect. Otherwise, we have nothing to discuss." Gulian suddenly said loudly. "Haha." Xingming smiled and nodded. He didn't say anything, but his idea was clear. The leaders of the other forces also supported Lena's and Gulian's decision. The establishment of this alliance was going to depend on his enthronement. Shi Yin frowned, his face cold. He snorted but said nothing. He looked at the coffin behind him, his eyes awkward. It seemed like this coffin had been here for a long time. Shi Yin had never found its aura before. After Frederick's soul had sent him a message, he left immediately. At that moment, Shi Yin could feel a hiding corpse chi underground. Then, Shi Yin knew Frederick had some other arrangement. He knew that Frederick had assigned the experts hiding deep underground to help him. Thus, right when he arrived in this meeting hall, he didn't try to be polite. He immediately took the chairperson's seat. As he was Bloodthirsty's heir, the successor of the tyrannical Bloodthirsty that year, if he acted humble, he was going to lose Bloodthirsty Force's face. The others would end up looking down on the Bloodthirsty Force. He had a feeling that not only the ones in this hall could observe his performance today, but also the experts of the 8 forces. Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng were the soul slaves of the Soul Control Chief. That man could see what he'd performed today through them. The Corpse Chi Underground was the work of the Corpse Chi Force under Frederick's management. Perhaps Frederick was watching him discreetly too. His moves in this hall were observed. It could affect his enthroning ceremony in the Bloodthirsty Force's Holy Land. Shi Yin didn't know what that enthroning meant, but Frederick had mentioned it before. Also, Gulian, Lina, and the others also mentioned that they would use that enthroning to be the criteria for their cooperation with the Bloodthirsty Force. He understood that it wasn't simple when Bloodthirsty's successor enthroned. It must have a lot of secrets that he didn't know now. As Hollow Fearsome Star Area, Prosaic Star Area, and Black River Star Area are from the same league as you, what will you do to help them with the God Clan's invasion? Shi Yin snorted inwardly as he had a series of thoughts in his head. Then, he reminded them of the main topic. We are from the same league. Of course, we will take our responsibility. We're here this time to show our attitude. Lina wore a stern face. We will take it seriously. We won't let the God Clan swagger. We'll fulfill our responsibility, said Gulian. Zhao Mu, Wu Lai, and Sanji cheered up. They knew the threat in their star areas would be lifted. Shi Yin nodded as he listened to them. He could ease his mind now. Chapter 1250, Internal Strife? Chapter 1250, Internal Strife, _ After they had made themselves clear in this matter, the Thousand Fantasy Sect, Broken Hall, and Heaven River Temple left the mansion. As Zhao Mu, Wu Lai, and Sanji knew that the Thousand Fantasy Sect would take their responsibility in the League to deal with the God Clan, they were so thrilled that they hastened to come back to deliver the good news. Xingji, you're really nice. Gulian smiled like a flower and looked at Xingming on the way out. As soon as Xingming left the mansion, his face darkened. Hearing Gulian mocking, he grimaced. He snorted and said, if he can enthrone, I will swallow my anger. If not, harumph. Xingji, how likely do you think it is that he can get that throne? Gulian's eyes moved as she smiled. It depends on the opinions of the chiefs of the 8 forces. As far as I know, the Soul Control Chief has his unique point of view in this. Xingming lowered his voice. When they talked about the Soul Control Chief, Xingming and Gulian looked grave and scared. This man's fame was told in every star area. He was considered the strongest and most mysterious chief of the Bloodthirsty's Cortege of 8. No one knew him until now. He had thousands of clones. Discreetly, he had controlled many strong forces. He even had slaves working for him in the God Clan structure. This man had contributed a lot to the reputation of the Bloodthirsty Force, making no force dare to look down on the Bloodthirsty Force. He was a significant influence. Lina's disciple and Shi Yin have a good relationship. I wonder if it's going to affect Lina's decision. The Heaven River Temple has been secluding for years. We don't know what scheme they have. We should notice this too. Gulian frowned and looked at Lina leaving. She's going to make a precise decision. Xingming wore a malignant complexion. Teacher, it's okay that you're going back to the temple, but why are you keeping me with you? Cecilia looked begrudging when she had to follow Lina. Turning into 2 clear water currents, they were flowing across the sky. Before Shi Yin got the throne, you shouldn't be too close to him. It's not good for you. Lena knitted her brows. The relationship between the 8 great inheritances is very complicated. Before he's enthroned, things can change in any minute. He could be killed too. What's the enthroning? Cecilia was surprised. Receiving the recognition of the chiefs of the 8 forces to sit on that throne means enthroning. Enthroning means his voice now matters in the main 8 forces. It also means the subordinates of the bloodthirsty force believe and serve him. He's bloodthirsty's heir, and he's cultivating devouring power Upanishad. Isn't it true that he could get that throne easily? What's the matter behind this? It's not that simple. Lena shook her head and turned her head to look behind them. As Frederick showed up, it means his force has no objection. But we don't know how many forces of the 8 great inheritances Shi Yin could control. If he can't get half of them, he can't sit in that position. Then what will happen? Cecilia was frightened. If he can't prove that he has the endless potential and can replace bloodthirsty of 10,000 years ago, they will ask him to return the inheritance. All of his power Upanishads will be retrieved. Lena sounded solemn. It means he will die. Dash. In the mansion, Shi Yin was sitting on the chairperson seat. There was only a jade coffin by him that was releasing the cold, in air. Anyone who was supposed to leave had left already. Right now, there was no one else in this meeting hall. Shi Yin studied the coffin and contemplated. Shortly after, his pupils shrank when brutal light shot out from his eyes. He coldly looked at the door leading to the outside space. 2 figures were walking towards him. Deep in their eyes, Shi Yin could see the vague shadows. The 2 of them looked baffled as if they didn't have their souls with them anymore. Surprisingly, they were Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng who had already left. In this moment, Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng looked frightened, their gait heavy. Their footsteps on the ground of the hall made a strange rhythm. It was like a drum sounding in people's heart. It made people's hearts beat frantically until it burst off. Shi Yin coldly looked at the 2 of them. When he met their eyes, he sneered. Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng looked bewildered. A shadow was flickering in their pupils. They suddenly glared at the fantasy sky ring on Shi Yin's hand. They hissed and grunted unconsciously like beasts and stormed towards Shi Yin. Mu Wei quivered and transformed terrifyingly. Shortly after, he turned into a massive maggot with a horrible, stinky smell. That smell plunged into Shi Yin's nostrils and made him nauseated. The maggot had so many fangs in its massive mouth, which were like the teeth of a sharp saw. The fat maggot didn't have any leg. It rolled like a rubber ball with a horrible smell. On the way, its body splashed a viscous, yellow liquid that stormed towards Shi Yin's head. Shi Yin's face got colder. Starlight sprinkled from his body, turning into bunches of starlight twirling around him. Shi Yin made a magical hand seal. The starlight in the sky suddenly ceased and turned into a starlight curtain that flew towards the fat maggot. When the maggot appeared, Shi Yin knew that Mu Wei wasn't the real Mu Wei. It was his life goo. Mu Wei's life goo had fused with his soul consciousness. Their aura and life energy fluctuation matched. Someone had used the secret technique to turn this life goo into another Mu Wei. This Mu Wei was made of the life goo, so it was like a clone of him with the same memories and soul aura. It could be said that this maggot Mu Wei and the real Mu Wei didn't have many differences. It could even use Mu Wei's power Upanishad in the same realm. However, the power of its attack was a little weaker. However, before the life goo returned to its true form, Shi Yin could see a vague shadow in his eyes. At that glimpse, Shi Yin understood something. The clone that Mu Wei's life goo had created had been controlled by the soul control chief for a long time. Just like Bello, his mind could be taken at any minute to serve the controller. It always waited for his order. Bai Yifeng's situation was the same. Even though he was the real Bai Yifeng, his soul and mind could be occupied at any moment. Bolts of lighting weaved in the sky and created a dazzling eye in the void. This eye was made of lightning, and it glared at Shi Yin. Shi Yin's soul shivered. His soul consciousness was about to shatter. His soul altar shook, and his consciousness didn't listen to him anymore. Bai Yifeng still looked baffled, but his hands didn't stop moving. While his 10 fingers weaved with each other, the bolts of lightning shot out like rods whipping Shi Yin's body. The brutal lightning bolts shot rapidly and broke the entire meeting hall. The lightning eye focused on Shi Yin. Under that eye, his soul consciousness fragmented. Bai Yifeng moved and landed in front of Shi Yin. However, he didn't want to take Shi Yan's life. He wanted to take Shi Yan's fantasy sky ring as his consciousness was hazy. The emotion in Shi Yan's eyes was chaotic. He gazed at the ring on his finger. He knew what they wanted. Bai Yifeng and Mu Wei came for that jade box because of the finger and the blood vein ring in there. This jade box was delivered to him by Tsunami Chamber of Commerce through Bai Yifeng and Mu Wei. Shi Yin and Wu Lai had opened this box, so Bai Yifeng and Mu Wei knew what was hidden in there. They didn't do anything at that time because they wanted to wait for the blood vein ring to slide itself onto that finger. A light flashed in his head. Shi Yin suddenly understood it. He knew Bai Yifeng and Mu Wei were just puppets. The one who wanted the finger and the blood vein ring was the soul control chief. Under the gaze of the lightning eye, his soul consciousness gradually shattered. He couldn't control his body anymore. He stayed put. That man didn't want his life. His target was Bloodthirsty's finger and the blood vein ring on it. The massive maggot Mu Wei had transformed, and the lightning didn't attack him anymore. Bai Yifeng was still baffled, and he raised his hand to grab the fantasy sky ring. Crack, crack. All of a sudden, the lid of the jade coffin in the corner of the hall was lifted up. The corpse chi from the coffin turned into strange tongues in the air that licked Bai Yifeng. Bai Yifeng's eyes were bewildered, as if he didn't know that the danger was coming. He was still stubborn, and he tried to reach the fantasy sky ring. The pale tongue licked Bai Yifeng's body. Bai Yifeng was like a fly that a frog's tongue had caught and pulled into a coffin. Right after that, the noises of broken bones arose from the coffin. Shi Yin could see blood and flesh splash on the lid of the coffin. More pale tongues flew out and caught the fat maggot, pulling it into the jade coffin. Puffed. The fat maggot exploded. The viscous yellow liquid shot out from the jade coffin and splashed on the ground. The ground then eroded and left many deep holes on the ground. The noises that could send shivers down people's spines still echoed from the jade coffin. Bai Yifeng seemed to be chewed off, and Mu Wei's life goo was exploded. The jade coffin had an explosion and then it closed. Then, Shi Yin saw only blood on the ground around the coffin. The lightning eye in the void was still there. It hadn't vanished yet. Shi Yin could see a dim shadow in that eye. That shadow threw a glance at the jade coffin and shouted something as if it was outraged because it couldn't grab the ring after its host was destroyed. The jade coffin lay in the blood puddle. After the eye vanished, the jade coffin directly sank into the ground and ran away from Black Iron City. The strange energy binding Shi Yan's soul consciousness disappeared after the eyes had vanished. Shi Yin was soaked in sweat. He sat numbly at his chairperson's seat and gasped for his breath, his face ashen. The soul control chief didn't come here using his real body. He just used 2 of his thousands of wisps of soul consciousness to manipulate his soul slaves to attack him. However, when the lightning eye gazed at him, Shi Yin didn't have any bit of energy to counterattack. Compared to the time he had countered Haig, it was much more strenuous. The jade coffin was what Frederick had arranged to help him in case the soul control chief wanted to snatch the ring. Shi Yin didn't know what was lying in that coffin. However, the terrifying energy fluctuating from the coffin was enough to numb his scalp. Shi Yin could only observe the fight. This level of fighting wasn't something he could join. It chilled him. He was filled with anger. Right now, he was like a volcano that was about to erupt. Chapter 1251. Struggle to Escape. Chapter 1251. Struggle to Escape, _ In the middle of the ruined meeting hall, rocks piled up while the deep cracks appeared and lead deep into the ground. Shi Yin had a dark and harsh face while he sat feebly on the chair, blood puddling around him. His eyes paled since he was tired. The battle with Haig had already drained him. His god power was massively drained. He hadn't had time to recover after Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng had come to attack him. With the help of that strange jade coffin, Shi Yin was able to finally escape. However, his soul was now weakened and his blood chi was massively consumed. Pondering for a few seconds, Yin had a blood light cross his eyes. A blood essence crystal emerged in front of him. He opened his mouth and sucked. A blood halo covered the blood essence crystal immediately and spun it. Wisps of blood chi were released from that stone and turned into small blood streams that seeped into his body through his pores. The color on his face gradually returned. The evil red halo expanded from his skin. His vitality surged once again. What a marvelous tonic! The blood essence crystal turned into powder. Yin exhaled a murky breath. Looking at the dismal, empty mansion, Yin frowned tightly. Hesitating for a while, he took out the jade box. The blood light moved in his eyes when he studied the jade box. This jade box stored a finger of bloodthirsty that wore the blood vein ring. As soon as the blood vein ring saw this finger, it immediately left Yin and slid itself onto the finger. Many years ago, the blood vein ring was always worn on that finger. It was a piece of its former owner's body. Sensing the aura of its master, the blood vein ring got rid of Yin immediately. It wanted to reunite with its owner, so it stood by him to fight against this world. Yin darkened his face. He observed the jade box, but he didn't dare to open it. He had many things that he didn't know about this jade box and the blood vein ring. Before he could solve these mysteries, he didn't dare to act rashly. This time, the Soul Control Chief had used 2 wisps of soul consciousness to control Bai Yifeng and Mu Wei in order to rob the jade box storing the bloodthirsty's finger and the blood vein ring. As he had made Yin his target, the Soul Control Chief didn't put him into his eyes. Relating to what Gulian and Lena had told him, Yin pulled himself together immediately. The 8 great inheritances that Bloodthirsty had created now had acted on their own. After the battle 10,000 years ago, Bloodthirsty had fallen and some of the chiefs were murdered. However, some had survived until now. Yin could confirm that they were Xian He, the chief of the Death Force, Frederick, the chief of the Corpse Chief Force, and the Soul Control Chief. Apparently, the 8 chiefs of the 8 great inheritances hadn't united. The Soul Control Chief didn't appreciate Yin. After Bloodthirsty had fallen, the 8 great inheritances had separated. No one wanted to work for the other. Yin, the Bloodthirsty's heir who had just made his debut, knew that it wasn't easy to get accepted from all the forces. It was also the reason why Gulian and Lena didn't make a clear decision. They were cautious enough. Before he could prove himself, they didn't give him the final answer. That year, when Bloodthirsty had fallen, the blood vein ring's memory was divided into 3 parts. Lao Luo, Xian He, and Xian Shan kept one for each. Also, although the Soul Control Chief was the strongest expert of the Bloodthirsty's Cortege of 8, he didn't keep any part of the blood vein ring. There was something ambiguous here. With his power and position in the Cortege of 8, he was their leader. It was strange as he couldn't get a part of the ring's memory. He suddenly confirmed that it was the internal strife between the 8 chiefs. Before the death of Bloodthirsty, the chiefs' dispute hadn't burst out. But when Bloodthirsty had fallen, no one could suppress this conflict anymore. Something must have happened between them. Frederick and Xian He can always find me easily. No matter where I am, they can simply spot me. Yin looked at the sky above his head, his face dark and glum. Shang Chun had said that he wouldn't help Frederick to deliver his messages anymore. If Frederick wants to see him, he will send someone else. I wonder if that one can find me easily as Shang Chun did. Those old freaks have planned everything and made me their puppet. They have tied a rope around my neck and pull me all the way. Yan's face became savage. He snorted as he had made up his mind. Fine cracks appeared in his eyes as he urged the spatial power around him. Then, space cracks appeared above the mansion. The brilliant space streamers fluttered from the space cracks terrifyingly. He lifted his head to look at the sky, grinned fiendishly, and then got into a crack there. He disappeared in just a blink of an eye. The space cracks moved around the mansion like flying dragons, cutting and slashing it. Shortly after, they had destroyed and exploded the entire mansion, including the 13 stone towers. 2 figures stormed out of one of the collapsing towers. They cursed under their breaths and flew away. That kid is crazy. Gillette of the Imperial Dark Tribe had dark and sinister eyes. He frowned and watched the space cracks disappearing. He rubbed his chin and then said, "The Tsunami Star Sea territory has many space passages, and they are all stable. If he used those space passages to leave, it would be smooth, and there would be no trouble. But now, the space passages are stable and have fixed destinations. It means that the others would know where he's heading. At the same time, his space cracks are created by his space power Upanishad. They aren't stable. They move continuously. Even the immortal experts couldn't know where he was going." Audrey's beautiful eyes looked strangely keen. She looked blankly at the sky and sighed. "He wants to get rid of the constraint." Gillette gave a faint smile and mocked disdainfully. From the day he received the bloodthirsty's inheritance, he couldn't act on his own anymore. Earlier, I'm sure there were some chiefs planning his life. Today, he finally recognized that his life was planned. He feels like a puppet, so he wants to escape. Unfortunately for him, everything is already planned. Not many places in this vast sea can shelter him from the ears and eyes of the others. Yeah, not many, but it doesn't mean there's no such a place. Audrey nodded gently. A strange light emitted from her clear eyes. If he can hide for a while, he can stir up the bloodthirsty chiefs. Perhaps they will recognize that this bloodthirsty successor isn't a puppet that they can manipulate. They would understand his name is Yin. He's not another bloodthirsty. If they want to train him and make him become bloodthirsty, something bad will happen for sure. It's good then, Gillette laughed evilly. Everybody is afraid of another bloodthirsty coming but not Yin. It's more interesting if he doesn't walk on bloodthirsty's path. How do you know he won't be as strong as bloodthirsty? Audrey was surprised. Gillette shook his head, his face disdainful as he gave no comment. He had experienced that era. He used to see that man from a distance. In his whole life, he had never met anyone stronger than that man. In his mind, no one could be compared to bloodthirsty. I wasn't born in that era and I haven't seen that man. I've only heard about his intimidation countless times. Audrey looked strange as she muttered, I only know the man called Yin. I used to fight shoulder by shoulder with him. I saw him defeat Harson and Haig. He has defeated all the warriors who were considered the young and talented warriors in this universe at the same realm. He doesn't have the brutality that could compare to bloodthirsty's, but he does have endless potential. Maybe Yin, the genuine warrior, will not be weaker than that man in the future. Ridiculous. Gillette just shook his head and gave a faint smile. Audrey pouted her lips and said nothing else. A jade coffin was moving in the ground of Tsunami Star like a lightning bolt that no one could locate. The headquarters of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce had a magical, imposing palace underground. It was even more spacious than several black iron cities. The passages and corridors in that palace were weaving with each other like a massive spider web. It had countless secret rooms and storage areas. Many chambers of this subterranean palace had restrictions. Some smaller palaces even had more than several thousand barriers and restrictions that made them the magical seals. The subterranean palace was the secret core center of the Tsunami Chamber of Commerce, where precious items they had accumulated through dozens of thousands of years were stored. Their experts made bases in this underground palace year-round. If nothing unexpected happened, the mysterious president of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce would stay deep in this subterranean palace. He discreetly controlled the affairs of the Chamber of Commerce in this vast sea of stars. He could use his soul consciousness and magic image crystal to send messages to manage the business of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce in many star areas. Deep inside the forbidden land of the underground palace was a pond with so many formations and restrictions. That pond of clear water reflected many images and showed different scenes that were different areas of Tsunami Star. The walls of this chamber had so many mysterious formations with some magical powers of earth and heaven. The grumbling noise suddenly came out from a wall. The formation there started to move and create a green light door. A jade coffin got through it and landed by the pond. When the jade coffin landed, the image in the pond changed. Countless blocks of images gathered and created a strange mouth with white teeth. An extremely handsome man walked out of that mouth. No one knew where he was or from which space he had come from. He held a jade box in his hands. It was similar to the one that Tsunami Chamber of Commerce had delivered to Yin. It was made of heavenly fragrant soul-soothing jade. Evidently, the same craftsman made 2 boxes because even the carvings were the same. He looked at the jade coffin and pondered. After a while, he sighed and raised one hand to grab the coffin from a distance. He grabbed the coffin and hurled it into the mouth in the pond. It disappeared shortly after. A strange light shot out from his eyes. Instantly, the walls of the room showed countless directions with the images of the corresponding sea territories of the major star areas. The images of people and battleships moved and flashed around. He looked at the pond for a while, arching his brows. Those images disappeared quickly. Strange and powerful formations reappeared. Not in Agate Star Area or Devil Blood Star or Grace Mainland. Where did he go? He muttered, his eyes surprised. Chapter 1252, Blood Sea, Bone Islands. Chapter 1252, Blood Sea, Bone Islands _ Deep in the vast sea of stars by ancient demon star, there was no planet. It was all empty. That area had a massive, black vortex like a spinning abyss, which was heading towards ancient demon continent. If someone could step into that pitch-black abyss, he would find a wonderland hiding there. This dark vortex was somehow similar to the black hole in Shi Yan's soul altar that could swallow the entire world. And it happened that way, actually. This area used to have stars and asteroids. However, after this dark vortex had come around, it had swallowed up all the stars and meteorites. The energy from those stars was converted and sent to the strange world inside the vortex. After many years, this dark vortex used to appear together with a man who seemed to come to this vast sea of stars from nowhere. That man was bloodthirsty. That year, Bloodthirsty had come out from this vortex to create earth-shaking karma. He had made many extreme, powerful experts of the 4 great creatures follow him and become his advisors. Like Desolate, this dark abyss was always moving. Sometimes, it disappeared and no one could find it. The God Clan had spent 10,000 years, but they had never discovered this vortex. Thus, the bloodthirsty force was able to preserve their holy land. Today, this dark abyss moved like a silent black hole and approached ancient demon continent. Ancient demon continent was now slightly revived. Still, no creature lived here. The holy ancestor Azure Dragon had summoned and moved all the members of Heavenly Monster Tribe to Endless Sea and Grace Mainland, their ancestral planet. Thus, ancient demon continent had become desolate. Inside that dark abyss was a strange world. It was a blood sea that was crimson and endlessly vast. It had the same color as the sky here, though. This sea lay deep inside the abyss, while the red sky had countless moving vortexes like talking mouths. Now, many shadows were landing and moving through those small vortexes in the garnet sky. They fell like meteors into the blood sea. The blood sea had 9 islands made of white bones scattering around. They weren't much larger than the immortal island, floating above the viscous blood. Among the 9 islands, the 8 smaller ones were surrounding the biggest one like how stars surround the moon. The 9 islands in this sea had dark and glum auras. The atmosphere in this area was deadly and heavy as if it was in hell. It would have put a lot of pressure on people's hearts. Many shadows began to gather on the 8 small islands. Those people belonged to different forces and races. They were from the God Clan, Immortal Demon Clan, Imperial Dark Tribe, Heavenly Monster Tribe, Corpse Clan, Human Clan, Sea Clan, and many other rare tribes. Those people had pierced through the vortexes in the sky and landed on different bone islands. Every one of them had a blood mark on his or her glabella. As they were scattered at the corner of the big star areas, their chiefs had summoned them to this holy land. Different auras floated above the 8 smaller islands. There were 8 different auras in total, which were from the 8 inheritance including soul control, death, corrosion, dark, chaos, destruction, despair, and corpse chi. At the same time, the island in the center was covered by a thick blood halo. A massive black vortex floated above this island. It was the center of this abyss facing the world out there. Except for the sealed island in the center, other islands had many shadows moving back and forth. On an island with dark aura, There was a pitch-black palace that was so dark that people couldn't see their own fingers when standing inside. Many warriors cultivating dark power Upanishad were sitting cross-legged outside that palace. A magical light shot through the vortex in the dark red sky. A man landed directly on the island of the dark power Upanishad and stepped into the palace. The warriors from different races surrounding the palace stooped to greet him respectfully. Uncle Xian He. The man who had just arrived was Xian He. He looked at the people outside, nodded to them, and then walked into the dark palace. Inside that palace was a pair of green eyes. It looked pretty similar to the place that Shang Chun used to visit that had the same pair of green eyes. Frederick was here. Seeing Xian He, the green eyes looked yearning. Did you get it? I did, smiled Xian He. I can finally leave this F***king place of Lao Luo. Although this place can block all the light and keep me safe, it has made me endure enough loneliness for 10,000 years, said Frederick. Frederick was from the Corpse clan, so he was naturally afraid of the sunlight. However, the experts could just ignore this disadvantage to move freely under the sunlight. As Frederick was one of the 8 chiefs of the bloodthirsty force and a precursor of the Corpse clan, the sunlight used to not be able to affect him. However, because of some strange reasons, his body became peculiar and he couldn't endure even a beam of light. He was even weaker than the newborns of the Corpse clan. Although he was the chief of the Corpse Chi, he couldn't stay and protect the island of his force. He had to stay in a dark palace to stay away from the light. He was a hero, but he could only use his soul to move around sometimes. His body was confined here. It was really sad for him. Xian He snapped his fingers. A drop of 7-colored blood emerged in the darkness. The 7-colored light moved inside the drop like mirrors layered on each other. Vaguely, it had the soul seals of 100 warriors from 100 different races, including many races that had lived in this cosmos. To condense this drop of blood from 100 races and lift the restriction on your body, I have to travel to almost all the corners of the Sea of Stars. After many years, the clansmen of many races had gone. For this drop of 100 races, I've had to travel around the universe. I've spent a lot of efforts, though. Xian He sighed emotionally. Anyway, Frederick didn't care about him. His green eyes sparkled fiercely when he swallowed this drop with the soul seal of 100 warriors from 100 races. Then, he closed his eyes. People then heard the sounds of cracking bones reverberate in the dark palace. It seemed like something had happened to him. Xian He nodded and said no more. He walked out of the dark palace and waited outside. After a while, a sturdy man of the Corpse clan walked out and laughed wildly. His skin was so pale that it outlined his deep green eyes and the fangs on his mouth. He looked like a gruesome demon. Congratulations, Uncle Frederick. The warriors cultivating dark power Upanishad outside the palace looked thrilled. They couldn't help but congratulate him. Frederick laughed crazily, his laughter full of brutal corpse chi. He had even made the blood sea surge. Suddenly, he stopped laughing, his eyes astounded. He soared up into the sky and flew to the adjacent White Bone Island. Xian He followed him closely. That island had the endless corpse chi hovering, and there were so many gravestones. The clansmen of the Corpse clan were cultivating there by those graves. A jade coffin stood in front of a massive gravestone. Amazingly, this jade coffin used to appear in Black Iron City. The creature inside this jade coffin had chewed off by Yifeng and Mu Wei, the two that the Soul Control Chief had manipulated. This coffin had come to the subterranean palace of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce and then disappeared from there. As soon as Frederick landed on this island, some noises arose underground when the members of the Corpse clan emerged from the ground to bow to him. The lid of the jade coffin was pushed open. A monster corpse with white fur like a white gibbon jumped out of the coffin. The fingers of this monster corpse looked like cold, sharp knives. Its mouth was also equipped with sharp, dagger-like teeth with a horrible smell. Frederick had fabricated this monster corpse himself. He had used a powerful gibbon of the monster clan that had the bloodline of the heavenly monster tribe. It was an intimidating creature indeed. For many years, Frederick had had to stay in the dark palace. This monster corpse had helped him do many things. This monster corpse was a brutal weapon in Frederick's hands. When the others saw the gibbon, they knew it was like Frederick came there personally. The monster corpse bowed to Frederick when it saw him and talked to him in a strange language. Frederick listened to it with a dark face. After the monster corpse finished, he snorted. He's impatient. He wanted to rob our master's remains. If I hadn't arranged this earlier, that kid couldn't have been able to counter him. He frowned and sighed. That year, his idea was already different from ours. It seems like he still keeps that thought. Oh, right. Is it that thing that the president has been planning secretly? He made a deal with us to help us find our master's remains in the space cracks. Does he only want us to subdue the God Clan to give them a stable market and peaceful environment for their business in the future? That president, of course, has some purpose he keeps from us. This man and the other are the same. They're both mysterious. Many times, I've wondered if he's the true body of that man. But from time to time, their activities are so different. If he hadn't helped me arrange the monster corpse, that man would have succeeded in robbing our master's remains. I think he's not that man. Frederick shook his head. After many years, he and Frederick had doubted that the president of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce was the true body of the Soul Control Chief. They'd tested to see, and they found that their deeds were so different. Right, I also think that they aren't one person. However, that president and that man are mysterious, though. What does he want after all? He was confused. Well, just put that president aside. We got something to worry about now. He told us through the monster corpse that the kid Yin has disappeared. He couldn't sense his whereabouts, said Frederick. Disappeared? He was filled with surprise. Today, you finally got rid of it, and we have endured so many hardships just to prepare for his enthronement. We've sent the Blood Imperial order already. It seems like he's discontent with what we've arranged for him, said Frederick. He frowned deeply. Since he has received Master's inheritance, his entire life is predestined. He's our hope. He must carry on our Master's spirit. All that we've done and will be done will turn him into our new master, whether he's willing to do that or not. It's true. Only when he becomes like our master can the 8 great inheritances swagger around this universe. Frederick nodded. Chapter 1253. The Ring Spirit's Fixation. Chapter 1253. The Ring Spirit's Fixation. Deep inside the subterranean palace of Tsunami Star. The president of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the pond, holding a jade box made of heavenly fragrant soul-soothing jade. His handsome face was grave and lightning moved in his squinting eyes. Tens of thousands of formations carved on the walls of this spacious palace glowed up all of a sudden with the brilliant lights of energy. The exquisite, ancient formations on the wall looked vivid and lively. They looked like imposing mountains, seething oceans, or even drifting clouds. Many strange formations on the walls were archaic and naturally formed. They were the utmost formations in this world that this man had bought with a huge fortune. The Formation Grandmaster of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce had relocated those natural formations and placed them in the drawings on the walls. The man sat silently for a long time and then opened a jade box. Strangely, the jade box was empty. However, his eyes flared up with divine light. His face expressed admiration and passion as he was stroking the box. It seemed like something was there, but it couldn't be seen by the naked eye. He focused and passionately fondled that thing. Countless formations and restrictions burst out magical, fulgent lights at the same time and congregated above his head like colorful rivers. A 7-colored water emerged magically with the mysterious power of nature and poured on this man's head. It then flowed into the jade box in his hands. As the 7-colored water was pouring into the empty box, something slowly appeared. It was a dark blue bone. That bone was half a meter in dark blue color. It had many natural textures on the surface with one pointy end and one round end. When the president saw the bone, his face reddened unhealthily. It was a shade of extreme admiration. He gazed at the bone and green veins bulged on his beautiful face. His porcelain fingers shook hard as he was trying to press down his crazy excitement. He rose one finger and touched the bone. When his finger was close to that bone, A suction force started like a magnet attracting iron. His finger was stuck on that bone. Instantly, his entire body was shaken hard as the god power in his body was massively drawn together with his blood chi and essence chi. That handsome face aged rapidly at a speed that the naked eye could observe. Shortly after, he had white hair. A terrifying fear occupied him. He spurted out blood. He immediately used a knife to cut off his fingers sticking onto the bone. He closed the lid at once. The seven-colored stream above his head stopped pouring. He paled, his eyes filled with fear and blood trickling down the corners of his mouth. He sat neatly and swallowed the pellets that he had stored for thousands of years. The wrinkles on his face and his white hair gradually disappeared. He looked young once again as his lost energy was slowly refilled. He was still ashen. He shook his head and felt very puzzled. It didn't work. What kind of energy was that? How could it be so terrifying? Dash. Deep inside the chaotic space basin, where there were brilliant outer space streamers, countless beams of light moved rapidly like shuttles. The gusts of cold, winds swept through the space that could destroy any soul in just a blink of an eye. Explosions constantly happened in every corner, as if it was never going to cease. There were no energy, air, sun, moon, or stars. It was a deadly silent space crack with the ultimate destructive power, the most dangerous place in this world. Except for warriors cultivating space power Upanishad at a specific realm, normal warriors never dared to enter this area. This place meant death or billions of years of loneliness. If they couldn't find the exit, even a third sky of incipient God realm expert was confined here. Years after years, they would be worn out till death. At this moment, a shadow was hovering in a shattered space crack. He hovered quietly in the void without gravity. Not far from him were brutal, wild gusts, and behind him was the strange, malignant light that was approaching him. In front of him was a field of explosions that could smash all creatures altogether with their souls. He didn't have more time to stop and watch them. He was calm as he watched the spatial changes around him and the approaching dangers. He frowned. After a long time, he took out a jade box. It was the heavenly, fragrant, soul-soothing jade box that kept Bloodthirsty's finger with the blood vein ring. He came here because no force or expert could locate him in this area. He needed an absolutely safe place to do something. The Bloodthirsty's cortege of 8 was divided into 8 forces. Frederick and Xian he were on his side. They agreed with his receipt of Bloodthirsty's inheritance, and that he would rule the Bloodthirsty force to resist the God Clan. These two had taken care of him well and helped him arrange many things. Right when he had escaped Grace mainland to go to Raging Flame Star area through that shattered formation, the shadows of these two and Lao Luo were always there. And even before that, Lao Luo and the Ring Spirit had set up a blood pond inside a cave in the dark forest to guide his soul from another universe. He became dispirited as his life was planned by someone else. He felt like a puppet that acted as the others manipulated. He didn't want a life like this. He didn't want to do things that people had planned for him to do. He wanted to get rid of this constraint for a while to reason and figure out a way for his future and what he should do with the relationship with the Bloodthirsty force. The soul-controlled chief had used Mu Wei and Bai Yi Feng to take Bloodthirsty's finger and the blood vein ring. Apparently, he didn't want Shi Yin to become the real leader of the Bloodthirsty force. Also, it was possible that he just wanted the blood vein ring and that finger. When the jade box was opened, hundreds of thousands of creatures in Black Iron City were killed. This commotion was beyond his imagination. Thus, on any life star, or even on an isolated asteroid, someone would be notified immediately if he opened the jade box. For many reasons, he had to go to the space crack, the most dangerous and magical place in this universe. Staying here, no matter how strong the expert was, he couldn't locate Shi Yin or know what he was doing. Shi Yin stroked the jade box for a while, and then tried to lift up the lid. Magically, different from what happened to Wu Lai, he didn't meet any obstacle. He could open the lid directly. He was dumbstruck, and his eyes were disbelieving. He was more baffled when he looked into the jade box where only the blood vein ring lay. That finger seemed to have disappeared into thin air. This time, there was no earth-shaking murderous aura or anyone who was killed. Looking at the blood vein ring, Yin was puzzled. After a long time, he instinctively touched the ring. Oh! The finger was still there. The blood vein ring was still worn on it. That was why Yin couldn't pick up the blood vein ring. That finger still existed inside the box. He could touch it, but he didn't see it. That finger seemed not to reflect or refract light. It was invisible and naked eyes couldn't see it. Also, the soul consciousness couldn't see or touch it. However, Yin could use his finger to touch it and find it was still there. Extremely bizarre. He fondled the invisible finger and stroked the blood vein ring. He used the soul consciousness to call the ring spirit and tried to connect it. The ring spirit didn't react. He pondered. A cut appeared on his fingertip. He dropped a drop of ruby immortal demon blood on the blood vein ring. A wisp of blood mist arose from the ring. The ring spirit that he hadn't heard for a long time sounded in his brain. I have only one master. Only one. Forever. The ring spirit muttered and repeated continuously as if its thoughts had never changed. Yin quieted down. He understood the ring, his eyes inexplicable. Then, he sighed. From the time he had gotten the ring, or from the first time the ring spirit appeared, it had never called him master. It had never recognized or accepted his ownership. Perhaps the ring spirit had thought that Bloodthirsty was utterly dead, leaving nothing in this world. Thus, it came and lived with Yin, considering Yin as its master Bloodthirsty. However, as soon as the ring spirit saw Bloodthirsty's finger, everything changed. Let's talk properly, Yin said. The ring spirit stopped muttering. After a few seconds, it slowly said, after the last piece of memory came back to me, I knew that my master's remains haven't been destroyed. His remains were scattered around the universe in the desolate corners. Some are taken. Some remains are undiscovered. You don't need to cut off the connection with me. I understand you're loyal to your master. I have never forced you. It's you who got fixed to your master. I can help you find his remains, Yin frowned. The blood vein ring shone with bloodlight. The exquisite drawings on the ring's surface moved. What Yin said had stirred up the ring spirit. It suddenly changed and replied, if you can help me find my master's remains, I will continue to assist you. I can help you enthrone. Can you tell me something about him? Where did he come from? How could he fabricate you? Who was he after all? Master is master. I'm just a ring spirit. I can't understand my mysterious master. He made me. I couldn't remember what I was before that. What are the names of the 8 chiefs of the bloodthirsty force? What are their identities? How many of them are still alive? Do you know them? Help me find a piece of my master. I'll answer you. How to find him? I can recognize my master's aura. Far from here, there's a piece of his remains. You go find him for me. Here? This space crack? This place? Guide me. All right. One more question. Why is this piece of his remains able to be seen sometimes and invisible at other times? It's tangible, but the soul consciousness can't sense it? Because my master controlled an energy. Only he knew and used this energy in this entire universe. The reason why he had fallen was because of this energy too. What kind of energy is that? You don't need to know for now. Chapter 1254, Senro, Chief of Despair Force. Chapter 1254, Senro, Chief of Despair Force _ Inside the chaotic space crack, a shadow and a finger were flying fast like a flaming bunch of light. The space crack didn't have an end, but it was silent. There seemed to be eternal dangers that could bury all kinds of creatures and even supreme experts. While the man was flying, his body emitted space energy with layers of magical waves that could neutralize the gust and chaotic energy currents in this area. His body sparked as if some sharp weapon was slashing on his body and sending sparks everywhere. There was no concept of time in space cracks. He didn't know how long time had passed by as he had just followed the ring spirit and was heading in a direction unceasingly and crazily. Yin had urged all kinds of energy at his first sky of incipient god realm, his immortal demon body, and the abundant god power. His energy wasn't different from an ordinary second sky of incipient god realm. If he urged his power to the acme, he could fight an expert at third sky of incipient god realm. However, in this current of chaotic space basin, Shi Yin had to consume his energy massively. He thought that it hadn't been a long time, but he had consumed 60 or 70% of the god power in the ancient tree in his body. He would use up his energy shortly after. Since he was in the space crack, he couldn't take in any kind of earth and heaven energy. Once he used up his god power, he could continue to use his star energy or the energy from the immortal demon blood. It should be enough to help him resist the dangers in this space basin. If he hadn't cultivated space power Upanishad at a significant level, he wouldn't have been able to even move a step in this place. Using space power Upanishad, he could use layers of space to shield his body from many fatal energy attacks. If it was another warrior who didn't cultivate space power Upanishad, even if he was at second or third sky of incipient god realm, he wouldn't be able to move freely in this area. In that case, that warrior had to find a safe place to use his energy to survive. Eventually, he had to die. Are we there yet? Shi Yin was so hurried. Not yet. We still need more time. But I think we're almost there, said the ring spirit. My god power has been used a lot. As we're flying fast, I will use up my energy shortly after. Then you should use your other energies. Star energy, body energy, immortal demon blood. If you use all of them, you can endure until we get there. Shi Yin gritted his teeth and nodded with a forced smile. After another strenuous time today, his body had so many cuts as if it was about to shatter. His eyes showed his exhaustion. He had only a tenth of his god power left. He had used up the star energy and the immortal demon blood. He was like an oil lamp running out of oil. This place wasn't any ordinary area of the universe. He could still sense his co-soul, so it was possible for him to use the soul connection to use the last bit of his energy to create a space passage to get to Grace Mainland. However, he couldn't use the power of the co-soul to refill his body in this chaotic space basin. It was because this place was so peculiar. All of a sudden, he halted, his face struggling. The blood vein ring and the finger halted by him. Surrounding them was a brutal force with a smashing energy fluctuation and mushroom-shaped clouds with terrifying energy fluctuations. Behind them were billions of light beams that seemed to be made of some special kinds of stones and gravels. Those small particles of dust and gravel could get through his skin to enter his body. Previously, Shi Yin was careless, so he had let some dust get into his body. He never wanted to experience that feeling again. He didn't know how long he had traveled in this chaotic space basin. During this time, he had used up all the items he could use to refill energy. Shi Yin had finished absorbing the blood essence crystals a long time ago. He had also used some spirit herbs and pellets to enhance his spirit. He couldn't use divine crystals here because when he took them out, they would explode immediately. Shi Yin couldn't take in the energy from the divine crystals. Until now, Shi Yin had used all things he could use to refill energy. He still didn't know how much time had passed while he traveled. The location that the ring spirit had shown him seemed so far away. Shi Yin suddenly felt hopeless that he wasn't going to make it. This chaotic space basin was desolate. There was no aura of living beings. Shi Yin was moving here by himself. If his mind wasn't tough enough, he would collapse for sure. I don't have a lot of remaining energy left. There is only enough to open a door leading to Grace Mainland. If I have to consume more energy, both you and I will never be able to go back. Pondering for a while, Shi Yin said. If he didn't have any bit of energy left to open the space door and he couldn't refill his energy, even if he cultivated space power Upanishad, he would drain his energy and die here like any other creatures getting lost in the space basin. Almost there. Right in the middle of the cloud in front of us. Go there and check it out. The ring spirit sounded persistent. Shi Yin frowned and looked at the cloud in front of them. He pondered for a while and then gritted his teeth. I'll believe you for the last time. He gathered his spirit to check his condition and calculated the entire amount of energy from the star, god power, his flesh body, and the immortal demon blood. Then, he used the energy to create a space barrier lingering on his body to protect himself. Slowly, he approached the cloud in front of him. All this time, he had retained enough energy to open the space door leading to Grace Mainland. He knew how dangerous it was in this area. If he didn't have the energy to open the last door, he would be confined here until he died of energy exhaustion. Right in front of us. The ring spirit became excited. It seemed like the ring spirit didn't need to consume any bit of energy in this space crack. It dragged the dark blue finger and moved to the clouds in front of them. Those mushroom-shaped clouds were dark gray and connected to each other. They were generated by the explosions down there. Yin didn't know what strange or magical things were hidden under the clouds. After a quick glance at the gray clouds, Yin suddenly had endless despair arise in his heart. His soul was restless in pain. He had a fear that his life seal was about to vanish and lead him to death. His face paled. He had to pull himself together continuously, his eyes frightened. Hesitating for seconds, he calculated the total energy in his body one more time. His face became resolute when he followed the blood vein ring and flew towards the gray clouds. Amazingly, that area was a shattered space created by gray clouds. That space was created by the gray clouds, so it wasn't really stable. If the experts at Incipient God Realm had fallen, their incipient extent could still remain in this world, and it even had their power Upanishad inheritance. That year, Ka-Tuwa had the inheritance of the chaos power Upanishad from Gru in the lonesome, dead territory. It was the inheritance left in the incipient extent when Gru died. If the other wanted to die utterly, the inheritance was annihilated with the incipient extent. In this universe, when the incipient God Realm experts fell, they could still preserve their incipient extent. It was like the demon area, the seven-layered underworld, or the chasm battlefield in Grace Mainland. They became the incipient extents left by the intimidating existences. After they died, their remaining incipient extents had slowly developed into some special structures. However, if an incipient God Realm expert died in the chaotic space basin, it was almost impossible to preserve his or her incipient extent. In the chaotic space basin, there were lethal gusts, mysterious dust, and explosions that could shatter even space. Thus, the incipient extent of the incipient God Realm who died in this place turned into ashes quickly. In a better case, it would be fragmented and scattered around the chaotic currents. The space inside the gray clouds was a piece of a shattered incipient extent. Although it was just a small piece, it seemed to be so important. It was because there was a dark cave inside that space. That cave was misty and gray. Yin could see a figure sitting on the ground. After first glance, Yin was struck. He had almost spurted out blood. Yin could feel endless desperate intent domains from that vague shadow. It affected him directly, as if it could drag his soul altar into the bottomless abyss of despair. The blood vein ring and bloodthirsty's finger were floating by that figure. Then, a dark blue bone appeared on the stone platform in front of the figure after the blood vein ring touched it. Who is he? Yin didn't dare to look at that vague shadow and tried to press down the annoyance in his soul. He asked, his face ferocious. Senro, Chief of Despair Force. Yin was shocked and he screamed. Why is he here? The Despair Chief was infamous in Agate Star Area. When he was at his peak, he was invincible in Agate Star Area. Yang Tian Emperor had learned the Despair power Upanishad himself. When he had separated from Yin in Agate Star Area, he had been attracted by a wisp of Despair power. Yang Tian Emperor had explained to Yin that he had found the land where the expert used to cultivate, so he had meditated there for a long time to improve his power Upanishad. After that, he started to challenge experts to progress his Despair power Upanishad through many battles. Yin could confirm that the intent domain that Yang Tian Emperor had used to comprehend belonged to the Chief of Despair Force. It was this Senro. He's gone. I think he came here with the same purpose. He wanted to find the remains of our master. Unfortunately, he found one and died here. He didn't cultivate space power Upanishad. Getting into this place meant that death was his final destination, sighed the ring's spirit. Use the devouring power Upanishad to come here. Yin did as he was told. The tier of power Upanishad in his soul altar moved. He triggered the black hole, and the despair intent domain vanished into thin air. Yin walked to the dark cave. Inside the cave, a beefy man was sitting. Evidently, he was an immortal demon expert. However, he didn't have any bit of energy in his body. As he was drained, his body turned into dust when Yin touched him. In front of him was a piece of bone that the blood vein ring was covering with its blood light. The man's frame was rotten. An intent domain of despair was still around him. The gray clouds were created from the fragment of his incipient extent with the pure energy. They protected this cave. The intent domain and the despair power belonged to him. I will collect it for you. You should give it to the warrior cultivating despair power Upanishad. It will increase his realm instantly, said the ring's spirit. Yang Tian Emperor's image emerged in Yan's head. Chapter 1255, The Cortege of 8. Chapter 1255, The Cortege of 8 _ Senro was the most loyal subordinate. After our master's body got shattered, he had chased after them into the space crack. He embraced the same thoughts as mine. We all wanted to reunite with our master's remains. The ring spirit sobbed emotionally. Oh, Chief Senro of the Despair Force. What realm was he at during that time? Yin was astounded. The Bloodthirsty's Cortege of 8 consisted of world-famous, tyrannical characters in this world. Each of them was stubborn, extreme, and intimidating. They had ruled many star areas in this sea of stars. From Shangqin, Xingming, Gulian, and Lina, Yin knew that the Cortege of 8 was incomparably intimidating. They had forced the God Clan to go back to ancient God continent. The God Clan had to strenuously strike a lot, but they couldn't destroy all 8 of them. Today, Yin had reached incipient God realm, and he had met Holy Ancestor Azure Dragon of the Heavenly Monster Tribe. He knew that the successive realm after incipient God realm was immortal. He wanted to know what realms the members of the Cortege of 8 like Senro had. Senro had just third sky of incipient God realm. That year, his realm was the lowest among the members of my master's retinue. However, his real competence could rank first. What the despair power Upanishad focuses on isn't realm or power. It's the deep understanding of the desperate intent domain. The ring spirit didn't conceal information from him. When Senro was at third sky of incipient God realm, he could slaughter immortal realm elders of the God Clan. In a hopeless situation, his despair power Upanishad could have dominating, unimaginable power. The blood vein ring glowed in the red light. The ring spirit immediately put Bloodthirsty's finger in the piece of bone they had just found. Listening to the ring spirit talking about Senro, Yin respected and admired the man. The Bloodthirsty's Cortege of 8 had supernatural powers Upanishad. Yin wasn't surprised that they could challenge experts at higher realms, especially the ones cultivating despair power Upanishad. This power Upanishad was extreme, but it had endless, powerful potential. Yin knew how magical it was. If he had killed the immortal realm expert at third sky of incipient God realm, Senro was definitely formidable. After the ring's spirit had collected the Bloodthirsty's remains, the blood drawings on the ring's surface moved. Gradually, blood light waves rippled and turned into the blood cloud mark. In the beginning, the mark was vague. It became clear and covered this incipient extent fragment. A vortex appeared in the middle of the blood cloud. A subtle, powerful suction was generated. Senro's god body turned into a wisp of smoke and vanished. The despair intent domain around him and the fragments of his incipient extent in this area turned into some sort of pure energy that entered the vortex. The blood mark refined that energy and condensed it. Eventually, everything became a gray orb as big as a chestnut. This orb sealed the wild energy of despair power. The ring spirit took the orb and said, "When you meet the warrior cultivating despair power Upanishad, I will give you this essence of Senro's power Upanishad. That warrior will be able to break the shackle of the realm instantly and enter the next realm." The ring spirit paused for a while and then said suddenly, That year, Senro had only third sky of incipient God realm, but this corpse had the shape of the immortal realm. Apparently, he had broken through one more time. As he was confined in this space for so many years, Senro had touched despair, so his understanding of despair power Upanishad had reached an unimaginable realm. If he hadn't died and managed to get out of this place, perhaps he would have been able to fight Ming Hao once. Ming Hao? Who's he? Shi Yin was surprised. The Soul Control Chief, the Ring Spirit answered directly, as I've promised. I'm telling you the identity and powers of the Cortege of 8. Ming Hao is the leader of the 8 subordinates. He cultivates Soul Control Power Upanishad. He's from the Imperial Dark Tribe. The current queen of the Imperial Dark Tribe is his younger sister. Shi Yin was bewildered. He mumbled, "Doesn't it mean he's Audrey's uncle?" The Ring Spirit continued, "If Ming Hao hadn't followed Master, he would have become the king of Imperial Dark Tribe. That year, he was one of the most powerful existences in this world. After Master had subdued him, he had imparted him the Soul Control Power Upanishad. That power Upanishad could combine with the magical power of the Imperial Dark Tribe's soul altar. It changed Ming Hao strangely. His body shattered directly. His soul had the ability to divide into countless beams. That year, he was the freakiest expert among the 8. He didn't have a body. Although he existed in the soul form, he could help Master rule many star areas. Countless wisps of his soul have scattered in many corners of the sea of stars. He has many puppets. No one knows his real appearance. Xian He is the Death Chief. You must know this man. He's a member of the Immortal Demon Clan. That year, he was also an excellent prodigy of the Immortal Demon Clan. He followed Master and Master had imparted him the Death Power Upanishad. Xian He's been cultivating Life Power Upanishad. People thought that his powers Upanishads would conflict with each other. However, Xian He is an innate talented warrior. He had cultivated both powers and merged them together. Eventually, he became the expert ranked right behind Ming Hao. He's so powerful and intimidating. Lao Luo was the Dark Chief. He was the expert from Grace Mainland. When he had just come to the Sea of Stars, he had offended many forces because of his haughty behaviors. The experts of those forces joined hands to chase him. Eventually, Master saved him and imparted him the Dark Power Upanishad. Lao Luo was brutal and heartless. After he had successfully cultivated the Dark Power Upanishad, he had helped Master expand their territory. He had many merits. Gru was the Chaos Chief. He was from the God Clan. His family was killed in the internal war of the God Clan. Gru lost his mind and fell into bedevilment. He became wild and savage, killing everywhere. Master liked his madness, so he imparted him the Chaos Power Upanishad. He was the maddest among the Cortege of 8. Bent was the Destruction Chief. He was from the Dark Clan. However, he wasn't a member of the Imperial Dark Tribe. Bent was an illegitimate child. His childhood was so pitiful. He had the seed of destruction in his soul since he was very young. Master chose him and gave him the Destruction Power Upanishad. What happened had proven that this power was born for him. With Destruction Power, Bent became a sharp saber in Master's hand. Senro was the Despair Chief. Like Xian He, he was from the Immortal Demon Clan. Master had a special method to impart the Despair Power Upanishad. He had left a wisp of this power in the middle of the world. Only extreme, desperate warriors who could resonate with that power could get it. Senro was the first warrior to receive Despair Power Upanishad, and he was also the last one who reached its maximum potential. He ranked lowest among the 8 experts. Frederick, the Corpse Chi Chief, is from the Corpse Clan. The Corpse Clansmen were born with the gift of controlling corpse power. However, they couldn't cultivate it to the acme to reach the highest realm. When our master walked around the Sea of Stars, he had found Frederick with innate talents. As he had no teacher, he was still able to cultivate the power of Corpse Chi. Then, Master had imparted him the complete power Upanishad. Frederick didn't fail Master. Shortly after, he has become the chief of the Corpse Clan and ruled the Corpse Clan around the Sea of Stars. He has turned the Corpse Clan that everybody hated to an influential force in the vast universe. Gatto was the chief of Corrosion Force. He was from Heavenly Monster Tribe. His entire body was toxic. The other members of Heavenly Monster Tribe had boycotted him. He had cultivated on a poisonous star. Master had found him by chance. Then, He gave him the corrosion power Upanishad. Gatto's nature was pretty suitable to cultivate this power Upanishad. Shortly after, he had aced it. He had progressed so quickly that even our master couldn't imagine it. He was the most fearsome expert among the 8. The ring spirit told Shi Yin the identities of the Cortege of 8 as it had promised him. How many members of the Cortege are still alive? Shi Yin pondered for a while and asked with a stern face. I guess only Ming Hao, Xin He, and Frederick are alive, replied the ring spirit. That year, which realm were they at? Shi Yin asked again. Except for Senro, the other 7 were at the immortal realm, said the ring spirit. Although he had had a premonition, Shi Yin was still shocked. He admired and respected those precursors, asking, So how about your master? The ring spirit kept quiet for a long time, then said, I don't know. You don't know? Shi Yin was surprised. The ring spirit kept silent. What's his relationship with the ancient continent Desolate? Shi Yin continued to ask. While training on Desolate, Shi Yin knew a fact through the ring spirit. The blood sword was forged from the spine of a member of the immortal demon clan 100,000 years ago. It shocked him a lot at that time. However, the ring spirit didn't give him more information. 100,000 years ago, Grace Mainland, God-blessed mainland, ancient god continent, and ancient demon continent had cradled heavenly monster tribe, the Imperial Dark Tribe, the God Clan, and the Immortal Demon Clan. At that time, the strongest generation of the 4 great creatures had tried to refine it to fuse it with themselves. The holy beast White Tiger was one of them. The 4 of them were the first generation of 4 great creatures. They had fused with the origin of the ancient continents and come to Desolate when it opened for the first time. After that, they had all died. The White Tiger had become a mountain. The precursor from Imperial Dark Tribe had become the ice-blue light curtain protecting Desolate. The god expert had left his incipient extent that Shi Yin had taken in. The immortal demon precursor had become the holy mountain. This blood sword was the spine of that immortal demon precursor. What was the relationship between Bloodthirsty and Desolate? It had confused Shi Yin. He wanted to ask, but he never had a chance. Eventually, he couldn't help but ask about it now. Master had created me. He didn't mention this with me. I don't know his real identity or where he's from. So, after he had created you, he used to take you to Desolate with him? The ring spirit kept silent. When it didn't want to talk to Shi Yin, it would use silence to answer him. Being silent meant that it didn't want to answer Shi Yin's questions. Shi Yin frowned. After a long moment, he said, We should get back. He didn't want to force it because he understood that forcing was no use. What the ring spirit didn't want to tell him, he could never force it to spit it out. 2 bloodlights emerged. The blood sword and the blood shield appeared. The ring spirit told him, I will not keep this sword and shield anymore. I will not serve you as my master. However, this sword and shield belong to you. You should keep them. After my memory has been fully restored, I can tell you the mysteries of them. Just consider it the payment for you to help me find my master's remains. The blood shield and blood sword were bloodthirsty items. In the past few years when Shi Yin used them, they could always be of significant help. Anyway, Shi Yin had always had a reluctant feeling when he studied these 2 divine weapons. He couldn't know their real powers or know how to maximize their abilities. Today, the ring spirit had given back the sword and the shield to him and explained to him their mysteries. Shi Yin was so thrilled. If he could understand the abilities of this sword and this shield, his competence would be enhanced greatly and his fighting ability would leap up. Chapter 1256, The Blood Imperial Order. Chapter 1256, The Blood Imperial Order _ A light door glowed immensely when a sturdy figure got through it, flashed, and then disappeared. Deep inside Shadow Ghostly Prison, there was a hidden blue planet. It suddenly had a slight vibration magically. A white light flashed inside the planet. A man walked out of that halo. This place was the center of Grace Mainland where the origin and Shi Yan's co-soul had fused with the soul of the planet to control it. Shi Yin appeared and slumped on the ground. He was so exhausted. The chaotic space basin was so dangerous. He had used up his energy there. In the end, he had used the very last bit of his power to open the space passage and used the direct connection between his co-soul and host soul to return to this place. Now, the god power in his body was drained. He gathered himself and urged the soul consciousness, sending one wisp to the fantasy sky ring. Many divine crystals flew out, floating and piling on him like mountains of divine crystals. The co-soul danced out of the crystal and turned into clouds of fire quickly. Those fire clusters covered the divine crystals and burned them. The energy in the crystals was evaporated and then condensed, becoming so thick like liquid twirling around Yin. His fantasy sky ring had millions of divine crystals. He had taken all of them out. Now, the divine crystals covered him while the heaven flames burned them. The wisps of pure energy soothed his dry god power ancient tree and his exhausted body. He felt cool and refreshed as if he was soaking in the sea of spirit chi. He slowly calmed his mind down. Can you tell me the abilities of the sword and shield now? Staying still, Yin connected the ring's spirit. I know they're both powerful weapons in Bloodthirsty's hands. What are their features? Actually, that sword and that shield were Master's main weapons at his early time. After that, his power had reached a level where no one could defeat him, so he didn't use them much, answered the ring's spirit. Relax your spirit and soul. I will carve the secret techniques in your sea of consciousness. Yin took a deep breath and then relaxed his mind. He cut off all chaotic, irrelevant thoughts. Waves of memories of magical, secret techniques began to root in his brain and stay deep in his mind. He quickly knew how magical and dominating the sword and shield were. Yin was thrilled, his face earnest and solemn. He sank into his thoughts to comprehend the mysteries of the items. During this time, his body quivered continuously while he hungrily took in a pure energy from millions of divine crystals to recover his power. The blood sword and the blood shield sudden appeared above his head. The blood mark on the host soul's forehead that was hovering above the soul altar glowed in a blood-red light. The light then shone on the mark on the shield and revived them. Instantly, the shield flew onto his body and turned into a set of tight armor that covered him. The armor had many blood drawings. The mark of the 5 blood clouds appeared on his chest, shoulders, and his back like savage, hungry mouths. The blood clouds were still changing. Each of the 720 acupuncture points in his body connected to this armor. The blood shield had turned into the toughest armor that protected his body. When this armor shielded him from attacks, it could absorb all energy hiding in those attacks and send it directly to Yin's acupuncture points. It seemed like the ability to devour essence chi from the dead could increase massively thanks to that blood shield. Unless the opponent's realm was higher and his cultivation base was much stronger than Yin's that could allow him to kill Yin within one blow, this armor could endure and even swallow the energy from the other's attack. The blood sword had so many bloody eyes on it. Those eyes belonged to the ones who Bloodthirsty had defeated. They stored the negative emotions including resentment, despair, malice, and brutality from those dead experts. Yin could use his immortal demon blood to activate them. Dripping the immortal demon blood onto the eyes, he could actually activate the official sword. The blood sword wasn't only sharp. It was so formidable that it could also enter the other's soul to slash the soul altar. It could fill his opponent's soul altar with negative fixations that could explode his soul altar directly. The blood sword could destroy the soul and also cooperate with the soul control power Upanishad to perform more marvelous attacks. Together, they could confine and disorder the opponent's soul, imprinting the slave seal in that poor warrior's soul and putting him into his eternal slavery. There was no way to get rid of it. The blood sword and the blood shield could attack and defend. They were Bloodthirsty's handy weapons at his early time. They had assisted him to conquer the universe. Their names were spread out the entire universe. However, as Bloodthirsty's realm had been increasing, he had comprehended a mysterious power that he gradually put aside the blood sword and the blood shield. He just needed to use the bursting power of his body and soul to be invincible. His abilities could be used fluently and flawlessly. Deep inside the planet, Yin was quietly learning the abilities of the blood sword and the blood shield while using millions of divine crystals to replenish his god energy. After his co-soul had burned all the divine crystals and condensed them, it hadn't returned to the crystal of the planet's soul yet. It had turned into a wisp of fire that danced above his head. His experiences in the battle with Haig, the struggles he had in the chaotic space basin, the knowledge he had gained from the blood shield and blood sword, and the changes of his mental state had sublimated his life form. Altogether, his understanding of the heaven flames had advanced. The Cyan world extinguishing thunder flame had turned into blue lightning with billions of bolts impacting and shattering. The Nine Serenity's soul devouring flame was bright silver with an aura that could destroy the souls. The ice-cold flame was milky white with power that was chilly to the bone. It had turned into beautiful, fulgent snowflakes. The world-extinguishing thunder flame, the Nine Serenity's soul-devouring flame, and the ice-cold flame slowly congregated, vibrating strangely and resonating. The ice-cold flame started at first. It sent its cold energy into the world-extinguishing thunder flame and the Nine Serenity's soul-devouring flame. The three heaven flames now had colding aura. Slowly, they came together and used an inexplicable method to fuse with each other. This time, fusing heaven flames came because of his advanced incipient extent. It had unfolded his understanding of earth and heaven powers and principles, space, death, and life power Upanishad. When his wisdom grew, his life sublimated, his vision opened wilder, and he could understand the origin better. He was stabilizing his incipient god realm and learning the powers of the blood sword and blood shield. At the same time, his heaven flames were fusing with each other. Meanwhile, many magical things were taking place in the world out there. Fiery Rain Star Area. In a magical, dark area, Yushan, Shao-In, and Xian-Fei were besieged. The Heartless God clan was chasing after them. However, after the defeat in Agate Star Area, the God clan had to retreat to gather their force. For the time being, people in Fiery Rain Star Area had escaped the dangerous situation. The Elder Committee of the God Clan had summoned the members who were explicitly invading other star areas to retaliate the Gu God sect, the Wu family, and the Jiao family. The God Army in Fiery Rain Star Area was also ordered to come back. The danger hanging over Fiery Rain Star Area was solved like that. Going from the hopeless situation to seeing the God Clan retreating made them so thrilled. They intended to call Benny and ask him to go to the inland areas of Fiery Rain Star Area to help them train their armies. They needed to build a foundation to prepare for the future war in Fiery Rain Star Area. However, when they found Benny, they discolored in fear. Standing inside a desolate area with a lot of rock, the blood mark on Benny's glabella was spinning and releasing unknown energy that shone red light into the sky. Benny's energy was drawn and sent into the mark. It looked like the mark gathered his energy to open a door. A bizarre medium-sized blood vortex appeared above his head. A strange suction force emitted and attempted to drag Benny into the vortex. As Yushan and Shao-In were dumbstruck, Benny disappeared into the blood vortex. Right after that, the blood vortex vanished into thin air. This place was the peripheral area of Fiery Rain Star Area. It was a desolate area with a sealed space passage that no one had ever discovered before. However, that vortex had forcefully taken Benny away. The other two didn't know where it came from and where it was headed to. The same situation happened in many regions in the vast sea of stars. Before Yin had returned to Grace Mainland, Leona, Phelan, and Ka Tual were cultivating on the Immortal Island. The marks on their foreheads had drawn their energy and created 3 blood vortexes above their heads respectively. At that time, Leona was training the soldiers of the Monster Clan and the Demon Clan. She was so angry, though. However, she felt a twinge at her glabella immediately after. Then, the blood vortex appeared. The 3 of them disappeared into the blood vortexes. Similarly, Yang Tian Emperor was in the Endless Sea when his blood mark stirred up a vortex that then took him away. While Blood Devil was cultivating on his Devil Blood Star in Agate Star Area, the mark appeared on his forehead and drew his energy to create the vortex above his head. He disappeared shortly after. They didn't know that the warriors cultivating the 8 great powers Upanishads in this entire cosmos had the same blood mark on their forehead, which then unknowingly took their energy to create the vortex and deliver them away. It was the blood Imperial order. That order summoned the bloodthirsty force to get back to their holy land. No matter where they were, they could use the blood Imperial order to return immediately. Dash. Inside the dark abyss and the immense blood sea, Benny, Leona, Phelan, Katua, Yangtian Emperor, and Blood Devil appeared on 6 different White Bone Islands. Benny was on Destruction Island, Leona was on Dark Island, Phelan stood on Corrosion Island, Yangtian Emperor appeared on Despair Island, Blood Devil came to Death Island. There were many warriors there. They were from different races and clans with different levels of cultivation base. However, similarly, they all had the blood mark and cultivated the same power Upanishad. Blood Devil descended from the blood vortex and landed on Death Island. As soon as he had arrived, many people on the island got scared. They instinctively moved away from him. Blood Devil didn't have a clue. After he arrived, he gawked and dropped his jaw as he found many people with the same blood mark and the fluctuation of death energy. "Sir, are you from Immortal Demon Clan?" asked a young man at the King God realm, but he was apparently an immortal demon warrior. He approached Blood Devil and asked respectfully. "Yes." Blood Devil nodded, his line of sight raking around the island. He found several thousand warriors standing on this island. They had different realms and were from different clans. There were warriors like him with high realms at Incipient God realm, and the lowest realm warriors were at True God realm. However, every one of them had the blood mark on their glabella that flashed from time to time mysteriously. Chapter 1257, Reunite. Chapter 1257, Reunite _ Death Island. Blood Devil looked around and watched the warriors with the blood mark on their glabella. They cultivated the same death power Upanishad, but they were from different races. Those warriors were also looking at him. This island gathered several thousand warriors at different realms. Before he had come here, the highest realm warrior was a black-scaled expert of the Demon Clan at Second Sky of Incipient God realm. That man was more than 3 meters tall with black scales covering his entire body. He looked cold and arrogant. As soon as Blood Devil arrived, the man changed his face as he had fear in his eyes. He immediately behaved. He had even stepped backward and left a space in the center. He remained a safe distance from Blood Devil. "Precursor." The immortal demon young man eyed Blood Devil and asked excitedly, "Besides the chief, you have the highest realm among the warriors cultivating death power Upanishad. Sir, where are you from?" "Agate Star area." Blood Devil frowned and contemplated. "Where are we? Where are you from?" "This place is the holy land of our bloodthirsty force. We're cultivating death power Upanishad. Usually, we are scattered around the star areas in this universe. Because of the blood Imperial order, we were teleported here by the blood mark," explained the young man. Blood Devil was astounded. He suddenly recalled what Shi Yin had told him. That year, when Shi Yin gave him the death power Upanishad, he used to tell him the advantages and disadvantages and the profile of the death power Upanishad. However, at that time, Blood Devil had never heard about the bloodthirsty force or the power of this force. He didn't consider Shi Yan's words important. He had never thought that he would be teleported here one day because of his death power Upanishad. He felt so reluctant that he didn't know what to do now. "Precursor, have you ever met the chief?" The young man hesitated for a while and then asked. As they heard him asking, many warriors on the island paid attention to Blood Devil. Those people came from different star areas. Although they cultivated the same power Upanishad, they didn't know each other. Only a few of them knew the connection between death power Upanishad and the bloodthirsty force. Most of them had never met Shin He. Some of them had received this power Upanishad from their family inheritance, while some others got the power by chance from the soul altars of fallen experts cultivating this power. This young man had asked many people here and found that no one had received the inheritance directly from Shin He. Also, no one had ever met Shin He. He thought that since Blood Devil was an immortal demon warrior and the rumor said that he was also an expert from the immortal demon clan, perhaps he had met Blood Devil and imparted him the power personally. That was why Blood Devil had reached third sky of incipient god realm. Each of the bloodthirsty force's chiefs had absolute power over his force. They had the power over their subordinates' lives. As the warriors here were all disciples of the chief, they had to strictly follow him. Many of them were infamous in their star areas. As they were teleported here unknowingly, they were so frightened and they anticipated what would happen to them. I have never met him before. Blood Devil shook his head. People looked disappointed. Suddenly, a blood light zoomed over from a far distance and landed at the center of the island in just a blink of an eye. A slender man with archaic facial features suddenly came. His eyes were crimson like blood, his black hair draping around his shoulder. This man looked evil and peculiar, indeed. He didn't have a robust vitality or surging energy rolling in his veins. Many warriors cultivating death power Upanishad just looked at him once and then turned around. Only Blood Devil and the black-scaled expert at second sky of incipient god realm were shocked. Divine lights shot out from their eyes as they observed the man. "Are you Blood Devil?" grinned the man. Blood Devil nodded solemnly. The man rose his hand and pulled. A violent force like an earthquake directly covered Blood Devil instantly. The man opened his mouth and spurted out a beam of blood that then wound around Blood Devil fast. Quickly, it had created a blood cocoon. The blood cocoon had a thick blood smell that nauseated people. The bloodthirsty force turned red and couldn't move inside that blood cocoon. The warriors cultivating death power Upanishad on this bone island were frightened. They bewilderedly looked at the man who had just arrived in fright. Although Blood Devil was at third sky if incipient god realm, he didn't even have a bit of energy to resist this man. He was confined instantly and turned into a blood cocoon. This kind of power was over their knowledge. "I gave you an opportunity. Let's see if you can make good use of it." The crimson eyes of the man flared with evil blood light. He let out a low shout and the garnet eyes appeared above Blood Devil's head. Those eyes were so similar to the ones on the blood sword that Shi Yin kept. The surging blood chi moved inside the eyes like blood lightning. There were 9 red eyes in total. Under Xianhe's control, they landed on Blood Devil's head and entered his soul altar. Pfft. Blood Devil had many bleeding cracks. The viscous, immortal demon blood covered his body inside the blood cocoon. "I am your chief. I am Xianhe. From now on, you guys have to follow my orders." The man laughed loudly while both his hands were making magical hand seals that rose the blood sea around them. The thick blood then turned into beams of pure energy that sprinkled on this small island. The warriors cultivating death power Upanishad convulsed when the blood fell on them. However, the light of excitement shot out from their eyes. "Bow to thank the chief." The young man from the immortal demon clan screamed excitedly. Then, the others answered him and cheered loudly. Dash. Corrosion Island. Although it was one of the white bone islands in this blood sea, this island had around dozens of warriors. As all of them cultivated corrosion power Upanishad, they had misty miasma on their bodies. However, at a corner of the island, there was someone screeching inside the green mist. The others understood the situation, so they stayed far away from him. No one dared to approach him. A vortex appeared above this island. An old woman jumped out of the whirlwind, landing firm on the island. She was Fei Lan at first sky of incipient god realm. As soon as she had landed, the blood mark on her forehead was still burning painfully. She looked at around dozens of warriors on this island and frowned. Her soul consciousness was released. She wanted to check the situation of the island. However, as soon as she had released her soul consciousness, the man inside the green mist in the corner of the island was shocked. He dashed toward her rapidly. Fei Lan wore a cold face and snorted. She was about to urge her energy to counter. "Hey, Little Lan, are you Little Lan?" A shivering male voice came from the green mist. The green mist hovered in front of Fei Lan, but it was as turbulent as his mood now. Fei Lan was baffled, her body stiff. Her eyes went watery immediately. It has been so many years. Finally, She heard the voice that she had been yearning for once again. That year, Phelan and Leona had left Raging Flame Star Area to go to God-perishing land to find this man. This man had disappeared several thousand years ago. She had missed him a lot. She had stayed in the land of God punishment to protect the city he had created and waited for him to come home. She had dedicated her most beautiful moments of life for this man. The green mist slowly dispersed and revealed an old man with light smoke on his body. He looked as if he had experienced many ups and downs in his life. He looked at Phelan with passionate love in his eyes. You also cultivate corrosion power, Upanishad. I didn't think that the Blood Imperial Order would summon you too. Benton, why you haven't died yet? Phelan gritted her teeth. However, her face was so excited as her crooked body quivered hard. Dash! On the Dark Island, at the same time, Leona fell on the sky. However, before she had landed, she was already shocked when the feeling of having someone with the same bloodline near her flooded her heart. Standing in the dark corner of the island was a calm and tenacious man. He suddenly opened his eyes, his body shaking hard. He stepped out of the dark corner in just one stride. He saw Leona landing. Leona also saw him. Their eyes met. Both the man and Leona had tears linger in their eyes. Leona's savage face softened for the first time. "Father," she cried, "I have never thought that we could meet again. It has been tough for you the whole time, little daughter," sighed Thor. At the same time, Benny and Ka-Tuwa had landed on the Destruction Island and the Chaos Island, respectively. They didn't know anybody there, so they were baffled and restlessly anxious. Shortly after, someone came to explain to them the situation. They knew that this place was the holy land of the bloodthirsty force, and that they were summoned here by the Blood Imperial Order. They were staying in different corners of this vast universe. Some of them even had a concealed identity. Because of the Blood Imperial Order, they were pulled to this area. Not many of them knew the details of the situation. They just knew that something big was about to happen. All of them were cultivating powers Upanishads of the 8 great inheritances. However, to many of them, this was the first time they ever came to this place. Some came from high-level star areas. Through their channels, they knew about the great events in the vast sea of stars recently. Vaguely, they knew something. However, they still stayed silent and waited. They knew that when the time came, someone was going to tell them about the situation and what was going to happen. Dash! The Soul Control Island. This island didn't have many warriors, too. There couldn't have been more than several hundred. Most of them were clansmen of the Dark Clan, Imperial Dark Tribe, and a small number of warriors of the Dark Spirit Clan, Ghost Mark Clan, and Dark Shadow Clan. Different from the other small islands, the warriors cultivating soul control power Upanishad on this island were strangely silent. After they had arrived, they said nothing. Each of them found a spot to sit down and cultivate. They didn't speak to each other as if they had already received some order. There was a member of the Imperial Dark Tribe at incipient God Realm with many ghost souls hovering and screaming around him. His 10 fingers had many black threads tying down the souls. Those souls struggled in pain, their facial features vague. From time to time, he wiggled his fingers. Those souls would shriek and screech as if he had just whipped them. Those souls seemed to have to endure unimaginable pain. He looked so bored as if he was waiting for something. After a while, a shadow appeared in his eyes. That shadow flickered as if it was talking to him and advising him on something. He became respectful, listening to the shadow and nodding. After a while, he got up, his eyes dark and glum. He hissed, "The chief ordered us to carry out the plan." Chapter 1258, I'm the Master. Chapter 1258, I'm the Master. Deep inside Grace Mainland, Shi Yin opened his eyes, starlight twinkling in his eyes like diamonds. A supernatural aura slowly emerged from him. His eyebrows twitched. A magical feeling of the entire world combining harmoniously flooded his mind. The corner of his mouth curved into a grin. Then, he suddenly had a marvelous feeling as if his body had become the ancient continent and the ancient continent became a part of his body. Squinting his eyes, he earnestly felt something. The smile on his face was broader. He felt so refreshed. He had finally touched the mysteries of the flaming origin and the ancient continent. After the world-extinguishing thunder flame, the 9 serenities soul devouring flame, and the ice-cold flame had fused, his 10 types of heaven flames were combined into 4. They had become part of his co-soul. Then, his co-soul had auras of the 4 heaven flames and billions of broken light dots. Those light dots had scattered equally as if they represented living beings. In fact, those light dots were real living beings on the continent. As Yin had fused with the continent, he could feel even the slightest commotion in every corner of this continent directly. Deep inside his co-soul were 2 magical seals that represented the whole life of a robust living being. When fusing the heaven flames this time, he vaguely felt the power that Haig had performed. He could now take and use the power of the ancient continent. He had touched the new secret of the ancient continent. The seals in his co-soul were the 2 phases that the ancient continent used to memorize. Those were the people like him who had fused with the entire heaven flames of the origin of this ancient continent in the long river of time. The first seal was from Holy Beast White Tiger. He was the first one who ever entered Desolate. He had tried to refine Desolate, but Desolate had killed him. The second seal was from Holy Beast Vermilion Bird. He had fused with all heaven flames of the ancient continent's origin. Eventually, he had died after so many years of wandering around the galaxy. The 2 seals represented the 2 ancestors of Heavenly Monster Tribe with their glorious time. The seals didn't contain memories. They contained supernatural abilities of White Tiger and Vermilion Bird and many marvelous secret techniques of Heavenly Monster Tribe. If he was a member of Heavenly Monster Tribe, he could immediately break through with the supernatural abilities from White Tiger and Vermilion Bird. His competence would incredibly increase. Unfortunately, he wasn't from Heavenly Monster Tribe. The existence of the 2 seals gave him a fact. If he died, his soul would vanish, but the heaven flames and the origin wouldn't. The 10 heaven flames would change one more time and scatter around the ancient continent, waiting for the one who was predestined to collect them. After he or she collected and fused with the heaven flames and the origin, that person could receive the incredible powers Upanishads of White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and the power Yin that used to cultivate. After the one who had fused with the origin died, the heaven flames wouldn't vanish. They would carry the power and memories of the former owners and impart them to the next owner. After 100,000 years, only the 2 sages of Heavenly Monster Tribe could gather all the heaven flames of the origin of Grace Mainland. Yin was different. He wasn't a member of Heavenly Monster Tribe, but he could fuse with the origin that had given birth to Heavenly Monster Tribe. Squinting, he quietly felt the power of his co-soul. The starlight dots twinkling there were living beings on the continent. His co-soul reached out and expanded to the entire continent, surveying the endless sea, the dark forest, the divine great land, the dark magnetic noxious mist, and even the polar areas. The entire continent seemed to shrink billions of times in just a blink of an eye. Yin observed each leaf of grass, the beautiful flowers, and more. Even the smallest things couldn't escape his soul consciousness and his heavenly eye. He was the god of this planet. Well? Yin hissed, his eyes dark and his mouth cold and stiff. He could see many giant monsters of Heavenly Monster Tribe lying on the ground, sitting in the caves, and even sinking in the sea around the Heavenly Monster Mountain range. Those giant monsters had thick blood chi like a massive flesh mountain. The mountains of the Heavenly Monster range were high and imposing. The energy was surging powerfully in those mountains, where there were many secret symbols of Heavenly Monster Tribe carved. Yin observed and found many magical ancient energy congregating formations created by Heavenly Monster Tribe. The earth and heaven energy of Grace Mainland was streaming into those mountains and making the energy there extremely thick and dense. Usually, the earth and heaven energy of the continent scattered around the planet. In some wonderful lands, the earth and heaven energy would be thicker than other places. However, the intensity level of the energy in those areas wasn't more than 10 times thicker than the other places. However, The energy congregating formation on Heavenly Monster Mountain Range had changed the structure of Earth and Heaven. It had gathered energy from the other lands to thicken the energy in those mountains. The Endless Sea used to have extremely thick energy. Because of those formations, only the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range now had abundant energy, as it had attracted the energy from the Immortal Island and the other sea areas. The Heavenly Monster Tribe was forcefully snatching Earth and Heaven energy under Shi Yan's management. They were purely selfish as they only wanted to benefit Heavenly Monster Tribe. Shi Yan snorted and walked out. He appeared in the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range immediately. He looked at the mountains covered with charms and symbols of the Heavenly Monster Tribe and used a secret technique, his eyes dark and cold. All of a sudden, a massive vortex like a tornado appeared above the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range. As soon as it appeared, it forcefully drew the energy of the mountain range into the vortex and then distributed it away. That massive vortex had deactivated the energy-gathering ancient formation on Heavenly Monster Mountain Range. The old monsters cultivating in the mountain range stormed out in rage. The descendants of the sky python, the gold crow, the Kirin, and the phoenix were as massive as a mountain. Their monster chi was as thick as dark clouds in the sky. Quickly, they surrounded Shi Yan. Who did that? Kirin Aogu roared. The flaming scales of his armor moved and sent out burning energy as if he wanted to burn Shi Yan into ashes. Tian was a descendant of the sky python. He opened his mouth and the pungent smell attacked people's nostrils. The black smoke fumed like a column with many toxins. Aogu and Tian were core members of Heavenly Monster Tribe. These two old monsters were at level 13, the max level, which was similar to the false immortal realm of the other races. Elders, please stop, Song Yuan suddenly shouted. Unfortunately, Aogu and Tian didn't listen to him. They moved their massive monster bodies, roaring and attacking Shi Yan. Azure Dragon, the holy beast, had assigned them to fix that formation. They had spent a lot of efforts to fix the ancient formation built by the ancestors of Heavenly Monster Tribe to benefit the members of the Heavenly Monster Tribe. Right when Shi Yan arrived at this place, he had broken the energy congregating ancient formation. He wanted to cut off the foundation for Heavenly Monster Tribe to thrive in the next 10,000 years. He had enraged the old monsters. They wanted to swallow him raw. If we weren't here, any one of you can threaten my life. Shi Yan looked at the two monsters' terrifying attacks and spoke in a low-pitched voice. Too bad. This place is Grace Mainland. In this place, I'm the master. The Kosoul triggered a thought. Suddenly, the torrential clouds in the sky above his head moved with tremendous pressure like billions of mountains pressing down from the sky. The attacks from Tian and Aogu and their monster bodies were shattered under such pressure. The shockwaves had even shaken Heavenly Monster Mountain Range. The other old monsters changed their visages. They couldn't stand still anymore. The gold crow faced the sky and shrieked. The sun outside Grace Mainland looked as if it was triggered to shine the flaming sunlight from a far distance, aiming at Shi Yan. Shi Yan had mocking intentions in his eyes. He lifted his head to look at the sky. Accordingly, the sky darkened as if there was a big sheet covering the entire sky. The flaming sunlight from the sun was blocked. It couldn't pierce through the barrier. Shi Yan felt so excited. Fusing with the ancient continent, he could use all kinds of power here. It was like his incipient extent that allowed him to do anything he wanted. This feeling satisfied him a lot. The ancient continent was like his Kosoul's incipient extent. In this place, he was the god that could never be shaken. He could mobilize all resources here to fight. After combining the three heaven flames, Shi Yan understood the ancient continent better. He suddenly had confidence that even if Holy Beast Azure Dragon was here, he wouldn't be able to bind Shi Yan on this ancient continent. Nathan the Phoenix screamed. The brilliant light radiated from his body when he soared up into the sky. Shi Yan stooped to see the monster body of the Phoenix. He grinned and then opened his mouth to spurt out a flame that magically changed and drew thick energy around. Surprisingly, his flame then turned into a flame that was the shape of Holy Beast Vermilion Bird. The terrifying aura of the flame from the primal chaos emitted from the vermilion bird. Nathan the Phoenix suddenly felt so small. Instinctively, he wanted to bow to holy beast vermilion bird. His power reduced massively. He halted in fright, looking at vermilion bird above his head and crying, "Holy ancestor vermilion bird." Haha, Shurien laughed darkly. Above his head, a giant white tiger with the aura of the immemorial era emerged like the phantom of God. Song Yuan felt his knees soften. He directly kneeled down, looking baffled and mumbling to himself, "Ancestor." The members of the Heavenly Monster tribe at every corner of the Heavenly Monster mountain range in human form had all turned into their monster bodies. On the ground, they clapped and marched. The phantoms in the sky, they couldn't help but cheer, "Holy ancestors, our holy ancestors." Aogu, Tian-in, and Nathan gawked. They were bewildered and felt so unreal. The aura of the vermilion bird and the white tiger came from the primal chaotic time. It was a tremendous threat to their souls. Instinctively, they were scared. It was similar to when they met holy ancestor Azure Dragon. This kind of fear came from the deep of their hearts that stopped them from resisting. Today, facing the formidable prestige of vermilion bird and white tiger, they were so baffled that they couldn't even think about continuing to fight. The members of Heavenly Monster tribe at Heavenly Monster mountain range crouched on the ground in their true forms, bowing and worshipping the illusions of white tiger and vermilion bird in the sky. They shouted and cheered excitedly. "Holy ancestors! Holy ancestors! Our ancestors! Our ancestors!" Chapter 1259. The Heavenly Monster Tribe's Perfect Plan. Chapter 1259. The Heavenly Monster Tribe's Perfect Plan under. Deep inside the dark magnetic noxious mist and east of the Vault of Heaven Sea area, there was an islet moving within its magnetic field. A cottage was built on this islet. Ghost Hunter in his true form was crouching on the ground in front of the cottage. His body convulsed as if he was in agony. Every time his body shook, beams of black blood oozed out and his skeleton was refined once. Azure Dragon had transformed into a brawny middle-aged man. He sat on a rocking chair in front of the cottage. He squinted and watched Ghost Hunter. From time to time, he boosted more energy to extract the contaminants and dregs in Ghost Hunter's monster body. He was using his special method to help Ghost Hunter transform and extract all dregs of energy out of his body. This way, he could make Ghost Hunter's skeleton as tough as his. In this magical magnetic field, the chaotic earth and heaven energy had created strange energy fluctuations. This energy fluctuation was similar to the fountainhead of power Upanishads. The warriors cultivating here could understand the powers of earth and heaven better, which could help them increase the realm. This kind of change had begun in the dark magnetic noxious mist since Shurien had fused with the Genesis fruit. Except for Shurien, the holy beast Azure Dragon was the only one who could feel the marvelous change of this area. He didn't try to be mannerly as he occupied the dark magnetic noxious mist and turned it into a private territory of Heavenly Monster tribe. Before this area had completed its transformation, he had brought Ghost Hunter there to claim the territory. He had a plan. After this place had become more stable, he brought Heavenly Monster Tribe's juniors who had the great potential like Zwashur or Tsang Yuan here to cultivate. Azure Dragon had set up the barrier outside dark magnetic noxious mist. Besides the warriors with the Heavenly Monster Tribe's bloodline, the warriors from other clans couldn't enter the place or take advantages from it. Right now, he was planning something while aiding Ghost Hunter to quench his bones. Suddenly, he jolted up in fright and looked at the Heavenly Monster mountain range from a far distance. He discolored for the first time. Swaying, he disappeared from dark magnetic noxious mist. His body swayed and changed. He appeared above the Heavenly Monster mountain range. Looking at the phantoms of the white tiger and the vermilion bird by Shurien, his eyes were so complicated. They were the creatures born in the immemorial epoch with him. They were the four holy ancestors of the Heavenly Monster tribe. In the long river of time, they had fallen one by one. Today, only Azure Dragon was alive. Seeing the illusions of the other two, Azure Dragon felt like he was drawn into the flood current of time. He couldn't help but recall the old stories. The pieces of the past emerged in his head like beautiful, magical pictures. They were born innocent. They met each other for the first time and became friends. They were so happy when they understood the mysteries of earth and heaven. They were so worried when Grace Mainland had exhausted. The fear they felt when they first left the homeland. Azure Dragon, White Tiger, and Vermilion Bird had experienced all of these. They used to walk shoulder by shoulder thousands of years ago. Today, he was addressed as the ancestor of Heavenly Monster Tribe. He had done his best for the welfare of his clan while his friends and his brothers had fallen a long time ago. For their ideals and faith, they had to pay with everything they could, including their last piece of soul seal. After many years, he was absent-minded upon seeing his best friend's images. He had even forgotten the reason why he got back here. Holy Ancestor Azure Dragon. The members of Heavenly Monster Tribe cheered in every corner of the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range in respect and admiration. He was awakened from his memory. Looking at the illusions by the young man, he took a deep breath. It seems like you've advanced further in fusing with the Flaming Origin. You can awake their seals. It's too bad that you're not from our clan. Otherwise, you would have been the best choice. He suddenly remembered Ghost Hunter and Song Yun, sighing inwardly. It would have been much better if Ghost Hunter got the origin of Grace Mainland, or if Song Yun could swap his origin with Shiyan's. Shiyan frowned and looked at him. You activated the ancient formation to gather energy. You made the earth and heaven energy of Grace Mainland pour torrentially on the Heaven Monster Mountain Range. It diluted energy in other areas. You're selfish enough to snatch everything in this world just for your Heavenly Monster Tribe. Don't you think you're too greedy? While he was talking, the illusions of the White Tiger and the Vermilion Bird slowly faded and vanished with the wind. Selfish? Greedy? Azure Dragon sounded surprised. Our tribe was born here. To the Heavenly Monster Tribe, this is our mother. What kind of selfish behavior is it when we take things for granted from our mother? Right from the start, this place was always our home. Everything here belongs to us. Why do you say that we're selfish? Pausing a while, he snorted. Human clan, demon clan, sea clan, and the other clans came here after us. They are aliens here. After we left, they moved in and claimed our homeland. Shame on them. We're too kind to let them stay. In the immemorial epoch, Grace Mainland had given birth to the Heavenly Monster Tribe. From the beginning of time, the energy of this continent was extremely thick in every corner of the planet. The members of Heavenly Monster Tribe in that era were so intimidating. As soon as they were born, they understood how to use earth and heaven energy to strengthen themselves. At that time, as the members of Heavenly Monster Tribe were getting stronger, they had been draining the energy of the ancient continent rapidly. Until one day, they found that the ancient continent had come to its final stage of the energy cycle. The energy here wasn't enough for them to cultivate and grow further. At that time, they had the ability to move in outer space. Azure Dragon's team that time was like Shiyan when he got into outer space and embraced the idea of finding a new world for their families and friends in this vast universe. Shortly after, they found many life stars suitable for them to live and cultivate in this immense sea of stars. Thus, the Heavenly Monster Tribe gradually moved to other star areas. It was a cycle lasted for 10,000 years. After 10,000 years, a new cycle began. Grace Mainland started to gather energy from outer space one more time. The planet that Heavenly Monster Tribe had abandoned was discovered by other races. They began to dwell here, and they became the new owners of the continent. The members of the God Clan, Human Clan, Demon Clan, and Sea Clan had come to this planet through many ways at that time. Dozens of thousands of years later, those clans had survived the immemorial epoch, the antiquity time, and the ancient time. They had become the owners of the planet. At the same time, Heavenly Monster Tribe was drifting between the major star areas in this vast sea of stars. However, some members of the clan had returned to their homeland when the energy there was at the peak. The holy beast Vermilion Bird had fused with the origin of the continent at that time. Unfortunately, he had fallen in the sea of stars. The Grace Mainland's energy took turns to be rich or drained. Heavenly Monster Tribe had moved to many other places of the universe, living and cultivating in level 6 or 7 life stars. Once the place didn't have enough energy for them, they found a new one. In that way, they didn't need to endure the hard times of lacking energy. They got used to wandering around foreign lands. They gave up the thought of coming home. They had become the only race out of the 4 great creatures that didn't consider their homeland the core land of the clan. Instead, they wandered around the universe. This was until they had the dispute with the Imperial Dark Tribe. Defeated, they finally recognized the subtle connection between them and the motherland. When Imperial Dark Tribe had defeated them, an outstanding expert of that clan had the Genesis fruit that benefited his entire race. It was the time of Imperial Dark Tribe. All members of the tribe could increase their cultivation speed and energy thanks to the change of their ancestral planet. Their entire race became stronger. Heavenly Monster Tribe got the bitter fruit. They disappeared one more time and hid in the corners of the universe. Quietly, they had moved their ancestral planet, the Grace Mainland, to the end of the Sea of Stars. Finally, they had recognized the magical relationship between the ancestral planets and the Genesis fruit. Recently, they decided to join the competition for the Genesis fruit on Desolate. With the Genesis fruit, Heavenly Monster Tribe planned to rise again to a new life. However, when they sent their experts to Grace Mainland to gather the Heaven Flames and the Origin, they found that Yin had gradually collected all of them. Yin didn't know that Heavenly Monster Tribe had planned to kill him to rob the Origin. At that time, He and Frederick of the Bloodthirsty Force had shown up and told them that Yin was their master's successor. The intimidation of the Bloodthirsty Force had shaken the entire world. Heavenly Monster Tribe wasn't an exception. The Bloodthirsty Force was defeated in the war with the God Clan. However, their fighting competence was still formidable. As Heavenly Monster Tribe was a loser in the battle against Imperial Dark Tribe, they were now also afraid of the Bloodthirsty Force. Because the Imperial Dark Tribe had defeated them and had the Genesis fruit, it made them rule the universe for 10,000 years. However, Bloodthirsty's debut had distorted the rules of nature. He had forcefully subdued Imperial Dark Tribe. The arrogant Bloodthirsty Force had directly replaced Imperial Dark Tribe as the tyrannical lord of this world. It was also the reason why the Imperial Dark Tribe had joined hands with the God Clan when they rose up to eliminate the Bloodthirsty Force. The era that should have belonged to the Imperial Dark Tribe was forced to end with Bloodthirsty's inexplicable appearance. Bloodthirsty Force had changed the rule of the ancient continents for the first time. He had stopped the Imperial Dark Tribe, the race with the Genesis fruit, from being the overlord of that era. In the past dozens of thousands of years, Bloodthirsty Force was the only special case that had stopped and replaced the race that should have leaped up with power to be the overlord of the vast sea of stars. When Heavenly Monster Tribe knew that the one who had the origin of their ancestral planet was Bloodthirsty's heir, they knew they weren't lucky. They thought that they didn't have the chance to change their fate. However, the holy beast Azure Dragon had gradually woken up. He had used his special knowledge to show the tribe a new way. He requested Heavenly Monster Tribe to help Yin compete for the Genesis fruit. As Yin was the representative of their ancestral planet, when he got the Genesis fruit, Heavenly Monster Tribe was going to benefit altogether. Then, Heavenly Monster Tribe had sent Yun to ancient Demon Continent to get the origin of this planet after enduring so many hardships. The next step was to send Yun to Desolate to carry out the plan of the Heavenly Monster Tribe. They succeeded. Yin had subdued Harson and Hague. Desolate had accepted him to take the Genesis fruit. Heavenly Monster Tribe knew that a great time was about to come to them. They thought that their plan was so perfect. After so many years, the race with the Genesis fruit was going to be powerful for 10,000 years. There was only one exception, which was when Bloodthirsty appeared. In their eyes, only Bloodthirsty could distort this rule. And today, the Bloodthirsty successor, the only one who could change everything, had fused with the origin of Heavenly Monster Tribe's ancestral star and even the Genesis fruit. Now, what kind of force in this world could stop Heavenly Monster Tribe from rising? It was a perfect plan. Chapter 1260, My World. Chapter 1260, My World, underscore. It was a perfect plan. However, when Azure Dragon stepped on the land of his ancestral planet, he knew that something was wrong. That day, he saw many human warriors living on the islands in the 5 sea areas of the Endless Sea. They were from the weakest race, but they had a terrifying reproducing ability in this cosmos. Apparently, they had become the new owners of the Endless Sea. Then, he immediately recognized something wrong. He realized that his perfect plan had a significant flaw. Yin wasn't a member of their heavenly monster tribe. Yin would never place the welfare of heavenly monster tribe as his priority. He wouldn't use everything from Grace Mainland to strengthen heavenly monster tribe. He wouldn't try to protect the benefits of heavenly monster tribe anywhere or anytime. If Yin was a member of the heavenly monster tribe, and he was bloodthirsty successor at the same time, Azure Dragon's plan would have been more than perfect. At that time, he finally recognized the flaw of his plan. He immediately found Yin and took him away from the Immortal Island. He had carefully threatened and asked Yin to claim the Endless Sea and the dark magnetic noxious mist. He wanted to seize the chance when Yin wasn't strong enough and his understanding of the ancient continent wasn't deep enough to force him to agree. As soon as Yin agreed with him, the flaw of his plan would be made up. Heavenly Monster Tribe could still take the richest land of the ancient continent. Unfortunately, Yin didn't follow his wish and Azure Dragon didn't dare to kill Yin. He had to begrudgingly put it aside. Then, he had squeezed his brain to think of a new idea. He used the holy land of the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range to open the energy-congregating ancient formation to gather the energy around the Endless Sea. It would make the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range the best place to cultivate in the world. If Yin didn't want to give him the Endless Sea and the dark magnetic noxious mist, he would find his own way to benefit Heavenly Monster Tribe instead. All the things he had done for Heavenly Monster Tribe was for the welfare and the future of the race. Thus, even though he knew that Yin was discontent, he was still persistent. In fact, when he had made up his mind, he had already considered Yin's reaction. It was because he was stealing energy that didn't belong to the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range. He was stealing energy from all the small islands around the Endless Sea to benefit his Heavenly Monster Tribe only. He wasn't afraid of Yin's reaction because he had realized that Yin hadn't fused completely with the continent. Azure Dragon was confident to stop Yin from the negative reaction. He had to fix everything before Yin became strong. It was his previous calculation. But now, seeing Yin use the white tigers and the vermilion birds' illusions, he felt miserable and bewildered, sighing continuously. He knew what it meant. It meant that Yin had fused with the flaming origin to another height. Now, he could use the power of the continent fluently. Yin had understood the mysteries that could make him the owner of this world. It would be very hard to confine Yin now. On this continent, Yin was the sole god. Although he might be just a false god at this moment, still, he was really tough to deal with. If they left this place at Azure Dragon's immortal realm, it was too easy to confine Yin. However, this place was Yin's world. Azure Dragon now had a terrible headache. Thus, he didn't attack immediately. He made use of the relationship between the ancestral land and Heavenly Monster Tribe to force Yin. With the thought that this continent used to belong to Heavenly Monster Tribe, Yin would feel embarrassed and yield to them. We were born here. This is our homeland. Only our tribe is the legitimate owner of this place. We have the right to use all things here. And only our tribe has this right. Azure Dragon was so outraged. His voice was like thunderclaps shaking the void above the Endless Sea. Lightning and thunder appeared thickly as if the sky was about to fall. As the other, irrelevant creatures can live here, we're showing enough mercy. His voice reverberated as he talked about justice with a strong sense of righteousness. Yin was placid when he looked at his lively play and cursing him under his breath. He calmly replied, "What right does a creature who has betrayed his ancestors and abandoned his homeland have to say those words? Among the 4 great creatures, only your tribe has been wandering around the universe and continuously draining life stars to maintain your strength. Although you were born here, you guys don't deserve to be the owners of this planet. He looked at the horizon and said, any race here has stayed here longer than you did. They have experienced each cycle of energy of this planet, and they have never left the place. They deserve to live here more than you do. If I hadn't taken the Genesis fruit, where would you have been now? Hearing him, all the members of Heavenly Monster Tribe were indignant. Their monster eyes showed their extreme rage. Holy Beast Azure Dragon turned purple in rage. A dragon roar echoed and triggered divine lightning from the 9 tiers of the sky. The bolts of lightning descended from the sky with a tremendous aura as if it could destroy the entire world. Thunder reverberated from the dark horizon of the continent. All the creatures living in the corners of the ancient continent were so scared. They immediately crouched on the ground and bowed at the sky to beg the god to stop his anger. As Azure Dragon was outraged, the world discolored. This continent seemed to be shattered in the next moment. At the immortal realm, in the perpetual time, Azure Dragon had destroyed countless planets. With his power, it wasn't really laborious to erase a level 7 life star. Azure Dragon was born with the ability to control lightning like a god of lightning and thunder. Now, his dragon roar had shaken the sky of Grace mainland like the god punishment of the god clan. It was so terrifying that it made all the warriors on the continent think that doomsday had finally come. Well, I will admire you a lot if you dare to destroy your ancestral planet. Shi Yin sneered, looking at Azure Dragon's rage. If you're still indignant and drawing the power of lightning and thunder from outer space, I would love to see where your heavenly monster tribe will seek temporary lodges after this sky has been shattered. Listening to him, the heavenly monster tribe's old monsters were so frightened. They kneeled down and screamed, Holy Ancestor, please, Holy Ancestor, hold your anger. They were more frightened than Shi Yin. At my cultivation base of the immortal realm, it's as easy as flipping my hand to combine billions of lightning bolts into one. Azure Dragon squinted. Countless immemorial symbols arose and swirled in his eyes. He drew more lightning bolts from outer space. All of them then combined and turned into an electrical beam with formidable energy that shot towards Shi Yin. That lightning strike looked like a strange world. It had billions of bolts of lightning shooting like flying dragons. Shi Yin could see images of Azure Dragon when he was a child, a teenager, a young adult, a middle-aged man, and as he continued to get older. It showed the encounters that Azure Dragon had experienced during his whole life, including the milestones of his life. As soon as that bolt appeared, Tian In, Ogu, and the old monsters at the false immortal realm were scared out of their wits. They vaguely felt that they were about to be destroyed altogether. Shi Yin stood still and looked at the coming lightning bolt. I'm standing still. I want to see if you dare to destroy me. He was Grace Mainland and the bloodthirsty successor. If he died now, it would put an end to Heavenly Monster Tribe's hope. At the same time, the bloodthirsty force would never let Heavenly Monster Tribe live in peace. He didn't need to think to know that Azure Dragon would never dare to kill him. It's true I don't dare to kill you, but I can always detain you. Azure Dragon smiled. You think you can detain me? Shi Yin felt funny. Is that the 9 divine extinguishing thunder restriction? It's the supernatural power that you've learned right at the beginning. This restriction can detain everything including immortal realm experts and the entire world? Am I right? Azure Dragon discolored slightly. It was true that this was the secret technique of the lightning and thunder class he had learned at the beginning. This restricting technique could detain everything in this world. However, it needed time to mobilize lightning power from the fountainhead of the world, so it was slow. That's why Shi Yin still had time to talk. As Shi Yin appeared to know this secret detaining technique, it meant that he had a deeper knowledge of the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the supernatural abilities of Heavenly Monster Tribe from the higher compatibility with the origin. Azure Dragon felt worried. It's true that your 9 divine extinguishing thunder restriction can detain even the world. But this place is my world. Shi Yin smiled coldly. In his laughter, the immense earth and heaven energy in the endless sea combined into one beam that Shi Yin held in his hand like a rod. His wrist moved and the rod whipped the air, tearing a space slit. Then, The void looked as if it was cut by a sharp knife. The space cracks appeared here and there. The rod made of the energy of the endless sea continued to move in the space slits. He gave faint smiles. Well, in my world, even if you are at a mortal realm, you can only watch me swagger. Do you think you can trouble me here? The lightning strike created by 9 divine extinguishing thunder restriction moved between the space slits, but it couldn't locate Yin. Azure Dragon grimaced. He felt so begrudging. At his immortal realm, it has been a long time since he felt begrudging. A warrior with the origin was the owner of that respective planet. In his world, he could take and use whatever he wanted. He could draw the energy. He could be the world himself. Azure Dragon remembered what Vermilion Bird had told him. Now, he understood his words deeply. Today, I'm at first sky of incipient God realm and my fusion with the flaming origin hasn't reached the utmost yet. I still need to work on it. But today, you can't be a threat to me. When my realm reaches another height and my fusion with the origin has advanced further, what do you have to fight against me? In the middle of the space slits, Yan's stern image was discernible as if he was staying inside the mirrors. He looked at Azure Dragon and the members of Heavenly Monster Tribe grinning fiendishly. If Heavenly Monster Tribe wants to deal with me, you should choose somewhere else. If you want to do that here, do you want to destroy your Heavenly Monster Tribe altogether? After he had finished, a marvelous vibration appeared in every corner of the continent. The Heavenly Monster Mountain Range shook violently like a ferocious beast attempting to burst out of the ground to destroy this mountain range. All the members of Heavenly Monster Tribe staying in the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range discolored in fright. The commotion coming from the earth was the sky's prestige, the nature's anger. It was the scream of the one leading a world. Holy Ancestor! Holy Ancestor! Many old monsters were frightened. They were desperate as if danger had come. They couldn't help but shout and look at Holy Beast Azure Dragon. Yin grinned fiendishly, hovering in the sky, coldly looking at Holy Beast Azure Dragon. The ancestor of Heavenly Monster Tribe at the Immortal Realm suddenly looked so old and senile. He looked at his frightened, Heavenly Monster clansmen and sighed dispiritedly. He deactivated the 9 divine extinguishing thunder restriction, lowering his head and talking begrudgingly. Later on, our Heavenly Monster Tribe will follow your rule to live here. We won't act rashly anymore. This time, we were wrong. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.